Hello, everybody. I apologize for the food in my mouth. I made a big mistake on my stream, and I fell behind in fixing it, so I didn't really get a chance to eat before starting, so I do apologize. Hopefully today we won't have as many problems as we did yesterday with the sound. If you weren't here yesterday, our sound was a complete and utter disaster here. There was a lot of issues with the sound cutting off, apps freezing, my camera stopping, stream not working. It was a nightmare yesterday, but hopefully today will be a lot better and things will be a lot smoother. Merle, hello, nice to see you. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. Oh, I forgot to turn on the fan. Give me just a second. I'll be right back. I gotta turn on the ceiling fan. It's warm in here. Okay, I'm back. So, yeah, so there were some issues yesterday. You were here, Merle, you saw that. But yeah, things should be a lot smoother today. I screwed up my whole stream, which was really frustrating. Basically, because of all the crashing that was happening yesterday, I am convinced that a big part of it was just the fact that my hard drive was so full of stuff. You know, I've got a terabyte SSD in my streaming PC. It's the one that I use for VR. Sorry, something stuck in my teeth. Okay. It's the one that I use for VR. And I wanted to delete everything except for the VR stuff because the other PC, although it's decent, like the gaming PC that I'm using is decent, it's still got an older Zen 5 CPU. And my main PC, my streaming PC, has a Ryzen 7, so it's a much more powerful PC. So I like using that for VR. The plan is to eventually wipe both of them and swap their jobs. So have the weaker one be the streaming PC, have the more powerful one be the gaming one. But for now, I'm just keeping it the way it is. Anyways, so I'm convinced that the SSD was just too full. So I started deleting a bunch of stuff. And I was being really, like, fast about it just because I was frustrated with what was going on. So I deleted a whole bunch of stuff and didn't realize that I actually deleted all of my transitions, all of my overlays, everything. And they were on my tablet, and I did a clean install of my tablet about a month ago, which also deleted all of my overlays, all of my transitions, and I did a clean install of my laptop because it was slowing down because I guess I downloaded something that just wasn't right. And that was my second backup of all my overlays and transitions, so they're all gone. So I found an old hard drive, my old SSD that used to be in the PC. It's mostly dead. And so I found that, and it had a bunch of really old overlays, like my original logo and everything, so I was able to pull that out at least, and that's how I got some of these basic frames. But needless to say, I'm not very impressed with myself because I put in a lot of work with all that stuff and it's all gone. Especially the transition. I don't even remember how I did the transition. I'm gonna have to do it again, which is gonna suck, but that's life, right? It's what happens. Back your stuff up. Don't be like me. I'm very irresponsible when it comes to backing stuff up. Even like when I was doing photography professionally, I used to keep people's headshots for like 6 months, and then I would just wipe my hard drive. Even my own headshots. You know, there's not a lot of pictures of me in the last 10 years because I wiped them. That's why I don't get rid of Facebook, because it's got all the pictures that I did have, but I have none of the originals of all like the really fancy pictures that I took. So be more responsible than me. Don't be like me. Kiwi, hello, how's it going? Welcome. Yeah, Merle, it was a lot of work because I do everything by hand, right? Like I don't hire anybody to do overlays. I don't look online. Like I don't Google things for overlays. There are certain things that I'll Google just because it's easier. But almost everything that I use on my stream is mine, right? Like I manually draw it out. I manually, you know, pick the colors and everything. That's how I went to like yellow. Because it used to be orange. It used to be closer to like the darker areas of this, and then I turned it more yellow because slowly I would just pick random colors and it would get brighter and brighter. And so I do everything by hand, but because I wipe hard drives and stuff, I'm sure I have a backup somewhere, like on a random, because I even pulled out like the two thumb drives that I could find. I pulled those out to see if maybe they were in there, but I've got like 2 other ones somewhere in the house, so I gotta find those. I got a couple of other hard drives that I'm hoping maybe one of them has the backup. I don't know. But you know, I was already late for the stream, so I was like, forget it. I'm just going to use the ones that I found and deal with it for now, but no transition, which kind of sucks. That's the part that hurts me the most. The overlays, I don't really care. I can do those in a couple of hours. But the transition hurts because I spent a lot of time getting the damn transition to work, and now it's gone. But that's life, you know? Brian, thank you so much for the TikToks. How are you today? Golden Red Pro, hello, nice to see you. Gelwin, hello. No, not my saves. I lost all my overlay stuff from my stream. All of my like design stuff that I had. Like I had specific windows and stuff that I'll set up, and all of it's gone. So it's kind of frustrating. But that's it is what it is, right? Yeah, Kiwi. It's still a good day for me too. You know, it's just one of those. I'm just explaining why I was late. I'm not actually like upset about it. I'm a little bit frustrated just because I know I'm gonna have to spend quite a few hours getting the transition again, but the transition's not super important. I use it twice a stream, so it's not super important. And the overlays, I redo them all the time. I've had so many different types of overlays. I've done so many different things. Like you can even, I'll even show you real quick before we get started. You can kind of see it on the stop it, on YouTube or whatever. Let me just move it on YouTube so you can see it. If I move it up. Okay, so this is the logo I designed. The little RFTFT is the logo I designed. The reason I've explained this before, but the reason I use it is because my name is Retro for the first time, and it's a very, very long name. And I was running into problems when I was like designing my merch and stuff, because I wanted like merch that would have like a small logo, or like for this setup, I want just a tiny logo back there. And it was really, really hard to get people to be able to read it when it was shrunk down, because Retro for the first time is just, it's so many words, it just turns into a blob and it doesn't look like a logo. So I was working on, oh, I already unplugged it, didn't I? I think I unplugged it. Damn it, I can't even show you. Yeah, I can't show you. I was going to show you the old logo, but I redesigned the logo because the logo before didn't work. It was a really nice logo. It just didn't work for what I needed. So I do my stuff all the time. Badass, thank you for the follow. I really appreciate that. No, Brian, I was the difficulty. The computer just did what I told it to do. I don't organize my files very well. I try at the beginning, but usually like when I do a clean wipe of the computer, by the time I'm putting everything on my computer, I am like, it's been a few hours. I'm completely just not wanting to sit here and organize. So I tend to just copy and paste all the important files. And then I somewhat organize them later on. And then what ends up happening is as time progresses, I get lazier and lazier and things just kind of pile on. And so I had copied all of my transitions, overlays and everything. Because I use Apple products for almost everything except for streaming, it's really easy for me to transfer the files between, you know, my iPad, my phone, my laptop. But when I try to get it on my computer, it's a whole headache of like using a thumb drive or trying to email it to myself. And if it's not the right format, then I got to go and do it again. Like it becomes a headache. So I literally just drag and drop to wherever I feel like. And I drag and dropped it to my downloaded folder, and I had a whole bunch of pictures on my downloaded folder for like overlays and stuff that I had done for, you know, promos of games that I did and everything. And then I just deleted the whole folder and didn't realize that all my overlays and everything were in there. And I went to the trash can and I did like the permanent delete thing. So they're gone. So it was me. It was 100% me. It wasn't the computer at all. Nice, badass. Nice. Well, I appreciate you being over there too. And thank you, Kiwi. Yeah, I spent a long time, because I'm not a designer. I'm not an artist. Like I can draw a little bit, but I'm very, well, I'm cheap, but I'm also very, very particular. So I prefer doing things myself because I don't want to have to, like, I feel really uncomfortable trying to correct something that I don't like that somebody else did. You know, I've never been very good at that, and it has to do more with like my socializing skills. I'm not very good at it, so I just kind of deal with it. That's how I ended up with like the yellow color, because the person who did my original logo, they chose brown and orange as my colors, and I hate those colors. I absolutely hate them. But I couldn't tell him that I hated them, and so I was just grateful that he did them for me. He did them out of his own kindness. Like he didn't ask for money or anything. I didn't approach him. He just came to the stream and then offered, and I said yes. So I felt bad saying like, hey, can you pick different colors? So I just went with it. And then once he stopped being active on the channel, I started kind of gaining more traction. So I started spending more time like tweaking the logo and stuff to make it work for different things. And you know, I'm a millennial, so TV, which a lot of like the younger Gen Z aren't really accustomed to, because they grew up in a time when like streaming was the more common thing. A lot of television would have the logo of the channel you were watching in the corner at all times, so that kind of mentality sticks with me. So that's why I always put it like for TikTok it's right there, for Twitch it's over here, but I always like to have my logo on screen. That way people can kind of connect it with me, right? And so I started tweaking my logo, and every time I would retweak it, I would like lighten the color just a little bit, because it was like orange and brown feels very Halloween-y, and so I started going a bit lighter till eventually I for a while I was doing like a silver and yellowish color, silver and orange almost, and then the silver kind of got a bit darker, and then the orange got a little bit lighter, until eventually I settled for like a really light yellow to a bit darker of a yellow, and I like it. And so that's kind of what's happened. So I'm okay with like tweaking stuff, but as far as the logo goes, I just chose some text, like a font, and then I literally like put every letter on its own, and then I shaped it, and then I erased certain parts and moved things around. And I had one guy come into my stream and like was freaking out saying that I plagiarized Respawn, because Respawn uses a very similar R to this. It's slightly different than mine, but like at the time that I did all this, I didn't even know who Respawn was, and so I didn't know, but mine's the whole RFTFT. It's not just the R, right? The reason the person got mad is because somebody else decided to make the little sub badges for my channel, and he just used the R and then changed the colors for it so you could see how long you've been subbed for. And the person was like freaking out that I had plagiarized Respawn and blah blah blah, and I was like, it's literally just a sub badge. My whole logo is very different from Respawn's logo. You wouldn't look at my logo and be like, is that the new Respawn? You wouldn't, but people, you know how they are. But I don't mind redesigning everything. It's just, it made me late, and that frustrated me, because I was like, I'm ready to start the stream, and then I was like, I have no overlays. It's just a blank camera with a bunch of black spaces, because I like to fit my camera into the spaces around the border, right? So you can see as much of the camera as possible. So especially on TikTok, there was like big black spots, and I had to like cover them so it wouldn't look all disheveled. So I think I did okay for now. I'll fix it later. I'll be lazy for a while. Future, how's it going? Welcome. How are you? Yeah, Merle. I'm just cheap. That's why I got into photography in the first place. I've loved drawing since I was a kid. I never had the dedication to sit for hours and hours and practice, so I never got good. I was, you know, an okay amateur doodler. I wasn't like a super talented person that you're like, oh, if this guy practices, he's gonna be like a professional artist. It was just like, it looks like what it's supposed to look like. And so I always liked it, but I never fully got into it. But like photography was never ever my interest. Even sound design was never my interest. But like with sound design, the only reason I got involved in that is because of my band. We had a friend, my dad had a friend who lent my dad a bass. He passed away at the beginning of the pandemic from COVID, and he took it upon himself to teach me how to do sound, because his belief, and I don't know if it's just because he taught me this, but I do believe this, is it doesn't matter how talented the band is. If the sound is bad, the band is going to sound bad. And it doesn't matter if you play everything perfectly. If the sound engineering is bad, everybody's going to think the band sucks. So he was very adamant. And he's like, and if the sound engineering is really good, even if the band is mediocre, it'll sound way better with good sound. And so he took it upon himself to teach me, and we didn't have anybody to do it. So I just kind of did it myself. So I fell into it, and then I became pretty decent at it, because I just kind of fixated on doing it. And then I got to the point where I was doing sound for other bands. You know, I was doing like 15-piece bands, like with like 4 trumpets and stuff. And, you know, I was doing a lot. And so it was the same with photography. I through school, we paid for a photographer to come and do our headshots. And it was like a $1,300 fee that this photographer charged. And the pictures that I got, I'm sure a big part of it is I'm just not photogenic. A lot of people say that because they think they look ugly. I look awkward on camera, for photos anyway. It takes a lot for me to have a photo that looks half decent, and I still can't tell, because I will take pictures and I'll bug my friends and I'll send them all the ones that I think are the best, and they always pick the one that's the worst out of the group. Every time, in my opinion. And so it's always like, I feel like this one's the best picture for me, but they always disagree with me, like 100% of the time. So clearly I can't tell what is attractive or not for myself on camera. So this photographer took the pictures, and everybody's picture looked like a professional headshot. And mine looked like one of those that you would take at Sears for your mom. Like it was, I was like this. She literally like put a chair and then put like a blanket over the chair and had my arms resting on the blanket, and I was like this. For a professional acting headshot. This wasn't just like a picture to feel pretty. It was a professional acting headshot that I was going to be going into the industry and auditioning for, like, well, in Canada they're famous, but like the Mirvish Theatre and Stratford, like I was going to be applying to those jobs with a headshot like this. I looked like I was a 6-year-old. And so I started doing research for another photographer, and it was between $500 to $1,000 for a decent one. And the ones that like specialized in like headshot photography for actors, they were all like $1,000 and up. And I didn't want to end up paying another $1,000 and then end up with pictures that I hated. And so I was like, you know what? I'll spend the $1,000 on a camera. And so I bought my first Nikon. A Nikon 5100 was the one I bought. You know, a entry-level DSLR. And it was one of those big, nice, chunky ones. And I learned photography through there. Because I was like, for the $1,000, I can take 1,000 pictures and nobody can say boo to me. And so I started practicing. And then I got decent at photography. And that's kind of how I fell into it. And then I got good enough that the camera wasn't good enough for what I needed, so I leveled up to the 7000, the D7000, which I still own to this day. And I still prefer using that for photography versus the Sony ones. The quality of the Sony's a million times better, but I just like the chunkiness of that one. I like the physical mirror movement. I just really like the camera, but that's how I got good at videography, is just kind of me being cheap. So it's kind of the same thing with streaming, me being cheap, not wanting to pay somebody on Fiverr to do a shitty job. I'd rather just do it myself. It's gonna take me 12 hours rather than just like, you know, emailing somebody and then they email me all the work. But I own it. I did all the design. I can be proud of the way it looks, and it doesn't look exactly the same as everybody else's. Which is a big thing in the streaming industry, is everybody kind of follows the trend, but then everybody looks exactly the same. About 2 years ago, when I first was blowing up on TikTok, everybody's stream used either neon blue or purple, or pink, but it looked more purple. And it was all that like 80s that cop show that was really famous back then. I can't remember what it was called, but it was like that 80s like futuristic feel, and all of their logos were usually looking like shaped like a shield, and it was like a cartoon version of their face with some kind of like thing around, or like a Spartan helmet, and it was so generic that you couldn't tell who anybody was because they all looked exactly the same. Whereas like my logo never went through that. My design never looked like that. It didn't look as clean as everybody else's, but it was completely different than everybody else's. So I prefer doing it myself for that reason. But it's a hell of a lot of work. It's a hell of a lot of work. Yeah, Brian, it was not a good headshot. The headshot that I ended up with. My classmates, a lot of them had really good headshots, but it was not a good headshot. I friggin' hated it. And the thing is, because now I know, because of the way that my being on the spectrum, I'm not very good at socializing face to face. I can do really well in short bursts, a couple of hours, no problem. Even when I tell people that know me in real life, all of them end up saying to me, But you're so good. Like you're so natural at talking to people, and you're so chatty and blah blah blah. And I'm like, yeah, because you see me for 5 hours maximum, so I can handle it for 5 hours. Hell, I can handle it for 8 hours. I go to work every day. I can handle it. It's when you see me every day for more than 8 hours, 7 days a week. Like when you're in theater school, you're in school a lot, and I lived with my classmates, and so my professor, the head professor of the school, was a professional actor. He did not like me. He really didn't like me. And so it was very much a hindrance for me. Outside of him not liking me, sorry, I'm just saving something I want to show you when I talk about the headshots that I do myself. Now I haven't done a really good headshot in a while. My picture on like TikTok and on Twitch and all that, my little logo picture, that I took that one, but it's not as good as when I was like really deep into photography. Anyways, the problem was that because my professor didn't like me, he would do nothing to help me. And so when the headshot thing happened, I didn't have anybody to approach to talk to them about like what should I do. And then even like when we auditioned for like the industry, for agents and stuff, 2 agents approached me that they really liked me. One of them was like, I'm willing to sign you right away. And the professor had told us from the start, he's like, do not sign with anybody until I look into who they are and to tell you if they're going to be a good fit or not. This wasn't just directed at me. It was to everybody, the whole class. And so they sent a mass email to the class, and they're like, hey, if anybody's been contacted, please let us know. We would love to look into who it is. So I emailed back and I was like, yeah, this person contacted me. They want to work with me. And so he emailed me back and he's like, okay, we're going to look into it. Give us like 4 or 5 days and then we'll let you know. 2 weeks went by and I never heard anything. So I emailed my prof and I'm like, hey, I haven't heard anything. Can I say yes to this guy? He's like, it's your decision. Do whatever you want. You told me to wait for you and you didn't answer me. And so then I emailed the agent, and the agent's like, sorry, we already filled the role. You took too long. So I lost an agency because of this professor. Like, this professor just didn't like me. But the whole thing with the autism thing is that I can be really, really blunt, especially when you set a rule and nobody follows the rule and nobody gets in trouble for it. It really bothers me, because then why the hell did you set the rule? Like, I made a really big stink because at the end of theater school, traditionally a good theater school, it's not fair, but it's how it works, or at least when I was in school. You would come in and there'd be between 40 and 60 students that would come in at the beginning year with you. By the time you graduated, there might be 15 students left, because they would just kick everybody out, and it was part of the contract that you would do this, because some people just aren't talented enough. Some people don't have the right look. Some people don't have the right work ethic. And the industry is so aggressive that theater school doesn't want you to waste your time training if they really don't think you're going to be the right fit for the acting world. And the acting world can be very, very hard on your self-esteem. Like, one of the agents that did say that they liked me, they didn't want to sign me, they weren't interested in signing me. He suggested I get plastic surgery. I was 19 at the time, and he told me to get plastic surgery because he said that, I'm funny, I'm ethnic, it works really well, but my face is too chubby and I'm kind of ugly. So if I got some plastic surgery to maybe, get rid of some of the chubbiness in my face, maybe get a nose job, and then maybe get the bags under my eyes looked at, then he'd be willing to talk to me. So call him if I ever get that done. Very, very blunt. I went to dinner with a director once, and he was asking me what my dream role would be, and I told him that this was back when I was 19, 20 years old. I was like, I would love to be in West Side Story. And he's like, yeah, I don't think you'd ever get. I was like, I'd like to be Tony in West Side Story, the lead. And he's like, I don't think you'd ever get that role. I'm like, yeah, I'm not a dancer, so obviously West Side Story is a really heavy dance show. And he's like, no, you could fake that. He goes, you're just too ugly. And it was just like, it wasn't like he was trying to insult me. He was just like saying, well, they want blondes and you're a brunette. Like, it was just that simple. He's like, you're just too ugly. And I was like, oh. He goes, yeah. He's like, you'd be good for like the best friend. You'd be good for like the funny guy. You're just not attractive enough to be the lead. And that was it. And so it was like, it's not for everybody. And so theater school would be really uptight. So we were told at the beginning of school that by the time we graduated, we would all be in a production. And depending on how big the class was, we would either do 2 different shows, so that way we all had a chance at a lead role, or we would do one really big show and then double cast. So then we would all swap out. So that way we would all get a chance at the lead role. And we got to the end of the semester. They only kicked out, I think it was like 5 students were kicked out. One that didn't get kicked out plagiarized her final assignment. So that was another thing I made a big deal about. But for the final production, we ended up doing 2 productions. And the people that got to do the one production also got to do ours. But the ones that were in my production didn't get to do theirs. And I was frustrated because the ones he chose to do the one production that got to do both of them were his drinking buddies, were the guys that he would get high with. They didn't study. One of the professors walked in on 2 of them having sex in one of the practice rooms. It's like they did everything that you shouldn't have been doing in school, and they got to do 2 shows. While students like me who were busting their ass to try to do something with this got to do 1 show. And it was just very much frustration, and he didn't like that I wasn't willing to back down when I brought that up to him. He really wasn't happy that I brought it up to him and that I was making a big deal out of it. But I was paying the exact same $5,000 a semester that everybody else was paying. I should also get to perform as much as the other guys do, or they should get to perform as little as we all do. And he didn't like that. So he just didn't like me because I can't. I hate when that happens, when somebody sets a bunch of rules, but then other people get special treatment. Hence why I hate politics so much. But yeah, it was frustrating. I can give him a free surgery. I'm okay with it. You know, I understand that I'm not the most appealing looking person, and that's okay by me. That's okay by me. You know, it's not the end of the world. There's not. It is what it is, right? I'm okay with that. So quickly to show what I was talking about earlier with the headshots. So this was, okay, this is scenery. This isn't a headshot, but like when I was really into photography, I climbed a mountain and I took this picture. This is one of like the best pictures I ever took in my life. For everybody else, hold on, for TikTok, just so you can see it too, because obviously I can't open up the image on one and have both of you see it. There. I took this picture and I'm like super proud of it. It was really fun. It was on the top of a mountain, and that was like an old, like 300-year-old staircase on the side of a mountain. Like if you literally walk over that edge, it's just a sheer drop, hundreds of feet down. And I really liked the little tree there by itself. I liked how it looked, so I took a picture of it. And you know, I like to do scenery and stuff. But when it comes to headshots, this was my acting headshot for a really long time. Like for a really long time. Obviously now I'm older, I don't look like this anymore. But this was my headshot for a really long time. You know, this is what I would audition for with acting, or audition with for acting. I would use this headshot, and I think it's a pretty decent looking headshot. You know, I was so much younger back then. I think in that picture I was about 23 years old. So we're talking 15 years ago. About 15 years ago. But yeah, that was my headshot that I used for a really long time, and it was a billion times better than this stupid thing. Like TikTok you can't see it, but YouTube, Twitch you can. Like it was so dumb. It was such a dumb picture, and I think this picture was really decent. Yeah, when we were young, a long time ago. But I'm proud of that headshot. I think it's one of the best headshots I ever took of myself. I've taken some really good headshots of other people. But you know, it's how I got into it, and that's why I have such good sound and videography stuff, is because I did photography because I was cheap. not for any like true interest. It wasn't like I was super excited about being a photographer. It was just I was cheap. Yes, Master Incel, these are the HyperX Cloud 2s. Pretty decent headphones, if you ask me. They're a little bit, they have a little bit too much. I have a really big head. They have a little bit too much clamp, so I end up with really like tight jaw muscles by the end of the stream, just from like the pressure of him pressing on my jaw, or pressing on my ears, but it happens to just press right where my jaw touches. And they're slightly too small for me, so like right now they're stretched all the way out and they're pressing down on my head. I have a set of Sony ones that I normally use, but the Sony ones have noise canceling, and when I wear those, they echo my voice. So I started using these again. But yeah, they're pretty decent for the price. They're not bad at all. And these ones in particular, I got the PC ones because, you know, they have the one that says for PlayStation and the one that says for Xbox, and it's literally just one of these plugs. But the PC one comes with a USB thing. Oh, don't start. The gaming PC crashed. That's really weird. That's never happened before. I got a blue screen of death. I haven't had that happen on this computer. Blue screen of death. Well, I guess we'll wait for it to load. It comes with one of these, the PC version of the HyperX Cloud 2s, which is like a little USB thing with a little like fake sound card, not fake, a sound card with fake surround sound. It's got like the 7.1 surround sound, so I bought them specifically for that, so I could have that surround sound when I was using PC games. And it was the exact same price as the Xbox one. And because it's got the regular headphone jack that you just plug into that little sound card, I can still use it on my Xbox. I can still use it on my PlayStation. I'm using it on my Go XLR. It was the better option. But if you're willing to spend, it's because it pulled up. It's all your fault. It's all your fault. It was all you. If you're willing to spend a little bit more money, I would probably, I haven't used them, but everybody like suggests these two different headphones. Sorry, I drank my coffee really fast. I'm like trying not to burp. Oh, what are they called? The logo is an A, but I can't remember what it is anymore. Crap. I can't remember what that one is, but I know the A40s, whatever that is, the A40s, those are supposed to be really good. And the SteelSeries Arctis brand is supposed to be really, really good, especially the wireless Arctis Pros or whatever they're called. Those ones are supposed to be awesome because they've got Bluetooth connectivity, they've got the wireless connectivity with their own little dongle, and they've got dual capability, so you can be listening to music from your phone while still streaming and hearing yourself, or hearing the stream stuff. So it gives you that extra freedom, which is a really nice feature to have. I've looked at those. I don't have the money right now. I'm not making money as a streamer, so I don't have the money to spend. You know, I'm in Canada. It's like $300 for those headphones. But if I bought those, as long as they didn't break, they would be the headphones I would use for a long time. I've had these for a couple of years now, and they're still in perfect condition. They also come with a second set of ear cuffs. So these are like the fuzzy ones, which are supposed to be good for breathability, and they let you hear what's going on around you a little bit better. I like using the fake leather ones because they kind of isolate the sound a little bit more. So I prefer those. But the SteelSeries Arctis Pro, I think is what they're called. Those are the ones that like everybody swears by. Astro A40s, those are the ones. Astro A40s are supposed to be phenomenal too. My brother has that headset and he loves it. He really loves it. Okay, let me start Minecraft again now that the computer started up. Yes, Mr. McJuggy, what is your question? I hate groceries, Weewan. I hate them so much. I have to go to Costco to go get some like paper towels and stuff, and I'm just not looking forward to it. I'm just not looking forward to it. I hate grocery shopping and I hate putting away the groceries. I just hate groceries. If I didn't have to eat, I wouldn't. But yeah, the blue screen of death is not a good sign. Her PC has acted up a little bit, so I'm thinking that once everything with my dad is settled and all my bills are paid and his funeral's paid for and everything's said and done with, I'm no longer going to be like having to like be careful with my own personal money. I'm probably gonna buy a set of hard drives to put 1 terabyte SSDs in both, completely fresh, completely new. And then hopefully that'll kind of settle a lot of the problems that I'm having. Because I think the SSD that's in her computer, my gaming computer, it's not her computer anymore. My gaming computer, I think that it's something like a year old. But the SSD in my big rig, it's something like 2.5 years old. But I use them a lot, right? Like I'm constantly deleting and installing. So they're pretty worn down. So I probably need to buy a couple of them anyway. So I'm gonna buy 2 1 terabyte SSDs for each. That way I have newer ones. McJuggy, he's my brother. He's my brother. We were just talking a few seconds ago. Yeah, he's not streaming as much anymore, mainly because he started a business, and he works night shift. And when he's not at work, he's doing business stuff. You know, like going and buying supplies, going and dealing with the whatever it's called, like the bill that he gives the companies that hire us, and dealing with scheduling or broken machines. So he's always really busy. So he'll stream on random occasions, but not as often as he used to. We are in talks of trying to settle down to see, because he just started the business about a year ago, so there was a lot of him kind of catching up on everything. But now that he's kind of settled and gotten the groove of his business, we're in talks of seeing if him and I can find a day that him and I can stream together on a regular or somewhat regular basis. We did stream a few weeks ago together, but his computer died, and so it kept crashing while we were streaming, so he just ended up giving up on it. I lent him my spare video card to see if that would fix it. We just haven't had a chance to try streaming again to see if it worked. But yeah, he's still around. Yeah, he's doing really well for himself. Actually, I work for him now. And it's been good. He definitely misses content creation. He's always coming up with ideas for like different video things that we could do together. But we never have the time. And so we never get to. But he also helps me come up with ideas. Like the character that we did during the 1,000 subs, you know, the I'm here for the 1,000 subscriptions. That guy, I took him over because he wasn't making content, and that character was pretty much on my channel all the time. And I had a bit of a blow up on TikTok, and it was too good to pass up that character. So I talked to him, and he was okay with me using the character. So I've got that character on my channel. One of the pinned videos should have him on it, on TikTok. And so I took the character over, but he still will message me in that voice. I'll be like, hey, you should do this for a video. And then he'll like talk out what the video would be. So like we had an idea of both of them being in a video together, like my version and his version. But because he's not creating content as often, and because I haven't been doing anything that would really make sense with it, we haven't done it yet. But we've come up with ideas quite often. Nikki, hello, nice to see you. Welcome. The 250 paper towels. But with the way prices are right now, at my grocery store nearby, I pay, it's like $25 for like 12 rolls or whatever, or I pay $25 for like the 20 rolls they sell. I'd rather get the 20 rolls at Costco. But I at first we were buying a lot of stuff at Costco, but after the breakup, she doesn't like buying as many groceries as she used to, so we don't really use Costco anymore. I use it for toilet paper, for paper towel, and for any like really big things that we're gonna buy that we need in bulk. But outside of that, I don't really go to Costco anymore. But there was a while there where I got everything at Costco, and it was nice because you would buy meat like once a month. But she prefers to go to the local grocery store 5 times a week to get stuff, so whatever, I'm not gonna get in her way if that's what she wants to do. Start shopping online and shipping it. We do that to a degree because we split up our bills here. So basically, like, I pay rent and then she pays for the groceries and pays like the gas bill and stuff. Just so it's easier to keep track instead of having to be like, you owe me $25 for the $50 bill. And so she'll sometimes order from Walmart, but the problem is pricing wise and timing wise. Sometimes it's hard for us because like if we're not home and they try to ship something to us, it's not exactly easy for us to be here all day long without going anywhere. And if we miss them when they come to the door and it's something that's got to be kept cold, it's going to get wrecked outside in the heat, right? At least Walmart gives us a specific time that they're going to come drop off the groceries, but then the pricing at Walmart isn't always great, and they don't always have what we need. There was a while there, a really long while. This is why we stopped doing the online Walmart thing, because we were only ordering online at Walmart. Because there was a while there where Walmart had nothing. Like, none of the stuff that we wanted, they kept screwing up our orders. And it wasn't even like kind of screwed up. Like, you know, we ordered from one brand, they gave us a different brand. No, like one time we ordered plum sauce to go with like chicken strips and stuff. We ordered a thing of plum sauce and they gave us a Frank's Red Hot as a substitution. How is that a substitution for plum sauce? Like that's a sweet sauce. Or they would give us something that we didn't order and it was smaller than the one that we ordered. It was the more expensive brand, but it was the way smaller version. And it's like we wanted that brand because it was the bigger one, not because it was cheaper. And so like it became more of a headache than it was worth. Or 99% of the time, Walmart would give us rotten vegetables. There was a time that we ended up getting tomatoes with mold on them. And like it was literally from the bag full of mold. Like how do you justify doing that? But then having to go all the way back to Walmart, which the Walmart we would order from was like a 15-minute drive from here, which isn't super far. But then you think about 15 minutes, it's a couple dollars in gas for me to get 65 cents back for the tomato. Not worth it. So this happened all the time. Every single order, there was something that was wrong with the veggies. I wasn't going to be spending all that money to go and refund a 25-cent banana, right? So then we would just end up throwing it out. But that was still a 25-cent banana that I threw out, which I could have kept. So I stopped ordering online because I had no control over what they were giving us. Or they'd give us meat that was all fatty. Like it wasn't worth it. It just wasn't worth it. So I stopped ordering online. I'm good, Nikki. I'm good. I'm just trying to open up a little bit more space so I can start working on a farm here. Just want to get rid of these like couple of floating trees. Don't leave trees floating. But yeah, back to the conversation about my brother. He's great. We just don't get a chance to do anything together anymore. We're hoping that we will be able to in the near future once he completely settles down with his business. You know, because he was still picking up a lot of contracts. And a big thing with his business is he needed a set amount of contracts to make an okay living. But he needed to, you know, fight for those contracts and meet new people and go out there and prove to them that it was worthwhile and whatever. And so he was always really busy trying to get that going. Plus, he bought a lot of contracts from another guy who was retiring, and his machines were older, so there was a lot of work for my brother to do to fix the machines and get them, you know, up to par. And so he just didn't have the time. Now he's finally got everything pretty much settled. He's got, you know, a staff that's taking care of certain places, and he's got machines pretty much fixed up. There's a couple that need a few things, but like they're going to be taken care of real soon. And so he said he doesn't want to travel for work anymore, because right now he's commuting up to 2 hours just to get to one place. And so he wants to work more locally. And then if that's the case, he's going to have a lot more time to, you know, do stuff. So he's hoping that he can start streaming at some point again, more consistently. And then if that's the case, I'm hoping that him and I will be able to stream together, because we always used to do like Dark Souls and stuff together. So I would really like to get back to that with him. You know, once in a while do videos with him and stuff. So there's hope. It's just right now not exactly the top of the priority list. My beard and mustache are growing in, and my mustache, I don't have like the flat mustache that a lot of guys have. Mine goes like straight out. So ladies, you don't want to kiss me because it's just going to go up your nose. And because they go straight out when I talk and I move my lips, the hairs will fold up and go up my nose, and then it itches, and it's like the perfect length right now that all it's doing is just like itching the tip of my nose constantly. All I want to do is pick my nose. Okay. Is that all the wood that's in here? I think it is. Oh no, right there. I don't see any more wood, so can I start to dig out? Oh, I should probably fix my shovel. SX, no reason. I just like it. I just like how it looks. Same reason that I have earrings. Same reason I comb my hair the way that I do. I just like how it looks. At first, well, I've always liked the way it looks, but like, I don't really, although I guess I might be wrong, but I don't really suit the, like, the alt look, you know what I mean? When I was in high school, there's this weird thing with the Gen Z that has romanticized the whole like emo punk thing. At least in my area, where like they think that the emo punk kids were like the epitome of the cool kids. So many people post online about how like I wish I grew up in the 2000s, and then they show like all the emo kids and they're like this is my vibe. And it's like, you have no idea how much those kids were bullied. You have no idea how much they were considered losers. And like it was not a good time for those kids. And so I never really dressed that way. I never did the emo punk thing. And I'm not saying that in a way of like, I was cooler than that. It just wasn't a look that I ever did. And so I never ever did anything like doing the nail polish or even like the eyeliner or anything, because it was just not the style I ever used or that suited me. The reason I said that apparently I'm wrong is because I went to get my hair done and the stylist said, well, you're an alt guy. And I had no idea that that's how I came off. Anyways, so I always liked it. But the reason I initially did it was because I saw a lot of people making fun of some of my friends who were doing it. Now they were defending themselves fine. But I was getting a lot of trolls coming through my comments at that point. And so I was like, no, these guys are being dicks, making fun of somebody for wearing nail polish. Like if it's an offensive thing to them. So I started to wear it almost as like a, does this hurt your feelings if I do this? And then my nephew started painting his nails, and he's autistic. He's a much more obvious autistic person than I am. And he struggles a lot more than I do. And so he started painting his nails. And so I kept it up specifically because I was like, well, if he sees me with my nails polished, then at least he knows that, like, if somebody says that it's weird or whatever, he knows that he's not the only one doing it and that his uncle does it too. And so I kind of kept it, and now I just like it. I don't do it all the time. And that's mainly due to just being lazy because these chip, like I just did these 2 days ago, and my middle finger, or my thumb finger, already has a big chunk ripped out in the middle. And so I don't like to have to constantly maintain them. So I do them once, and then I just kind of wear them until they completely rip, like until they completely come off. And then when I remember again, I do them again. Problem is I usually remember at like 10 at night, and I work night shift. So if I were to do them then, they're going to get wrecked by the end of the night by all the chemicals that I use. Or I'll remember when I get home and get ready to go to bed. But then if I do them right before bed, I might have to be up for a couple of hours, because I find that the stuff that I use doesn't completely dry for a few hours. And so like if it's not like 5 or 6 hours before I go to bed, I end up with like the fabric pattern indented on the nails, and then it drives me crazy. But yeah, that's why I do it, just because I like it. Emo was a lifestyle. Emo was completely a lifestyle, and it was a lifestyle that, you know, when you were in the know, it was, you know, you had your ride or die friends, but there was a lot of bullying that happened. Like a lot of the kids that were emo at the time, they were the outcasts. Like they were the weird kids. They were the ones that everybody made fun of. But for some reason, Gen Z is under the impression that the emo kids were like the Charlie D'Amelios of our time, and it's like, no, they weren't. They weren't the Charlie D'Amelios. They were the ones that we all. They were the anime kids of now. Like, you know how they have the cosplay kids that do the dancing and stuff on TikTok and everything. Like, that's so cringy. That's who the emo kids were of our time. So like, I'm not saying that people were right about that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say like they were losers. I'm just saying that's how they were perceived. So it's weird for me to see Gen Z acting like the emo kids were like the Charlie D'Amelios, when it's like, no, you really have no idea what it was like back then. Because those kids, they went through a lot. And for me, it's more of the case of like, it's almost belittling what people around my age went through when they were emos. Like it wasn't a fun time for them. They were trying to be themselves and they just couldn't, and they were hated for it. The bad weird. I wouldn't say bad weird. It was just they couldn't be themselves. Really, they couldn't be themselves. It's kind of like the death metal group, right? Like the death metal group, to the outsiders, death metal kids were also seen as like bad weird. You know, because a lot of death metal fans, they're okay with like blood and demonic symbols and stuff. And, you know, now as an adult, I'm like, yeah, whatever, it's cool, no big deal. But as a kid, you're like, oh, they're so weird. Why are they like obsessed with blood? Why are they obsessed with vampires? That's so cringe. That we didn't say cringe back then, but you know. So like they were just different, and they weren't willing to give up what they liked just to be seen as cool. Whereas like somebody like me, I gave up everything I liked just to be considered cool, even though I wasn't really into what everybody else was into. It was just for me to feel like I was accepted, which in the long run is just as crappy as being the outcast, because at least being the outcast, you're surrounded by other people that like what you like. I was surrounded by people that didn't like what I liked, and I was doing everything that I could to fit in and hide who I was. So it's a different set of frustrations, you know what I mean? Yeah, it wasn't the quirky, fun, cutesy weird. It was the weird that made them targets. It made them get bullied. It made them, you know, like be made fun of, and not in a way like even now when I say like the anime kids that do the dancing and stuff, like yeah, they can be seen as cringe, and the outside world sees them as really weird and cringy. But they're successful. Like the anime kids, some of the biggest content creators on TikTok are the anime kids. You know, I guess a better analogy would be like the bronies. Whereas like if you're a brony, you're in your own world and you're in your own thing, but the rest of the world sees it as like a really weird, uncomfortable thing. That's kind of how emo was seen when I was growing up, at least in this region. Where like if you were an emo kid, you were like uncomfortably weird. You were an attention seeker, and it wasn't always the case. The funny thing is, like by the end of high school, all of my friends were emo kids. I was the only one that wasn't, and I was the pretty boy, and they made fun of me for being a pretty boy. You know, and out of all of my friends, the emo kids, almost all of them are way happier now as adults than the kids who were cool back then. The kids who were cool back then, now as adults, are the most miserable. They work their 9 to 5. They don't have any joy in their life. Their joy is watching football and drinking, and that's it. Whereas like the kids who were emo kids back in the day, they still play their video games. They still do all their like nerdy stuff, but they do them as adults and they enjoy them, and they have all the stuff that they love. Whereas like all my friends who weren't emo kids, now they're like the most miserable people in the world, and they have nothing fun in their life. Which is like, it's a testament to show that even though they got targeted and beat up a lot, like emotionally beat up a lot as kids, they were being true to who they were, and they were enjoying their life, which is something that a lot of us weren't willing to do back then. I was in a gang. I was so in a gang. Still am. I'll never. Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like when you're in that group, because you're happy with who you are and what you like, you don't care if people make fun of you, right? Like obviously it has its moments where it's hard, you know, and a lot of people will do that. Oh, I didn't even care, but they did, because overall people want approval. Whether it's from the popular group or not, you want approval from people around you. And like I said, it doesn't have to be the popular kids. It's not like I want the popular kids to think I'm cool. It's just, you also don't want to be picked out of the group. You know what I mean? So like it's still hard when you're younger. Now when you get older, you kind of learn to embrace that difference. And so it almost becomes like I never cared. You probably did at one point, but it was worth the struggle for who you are now. You know what I mean? Which is something that I've had to learn as an adult, because I did care what people what people thought, and I cared more than what any of my emo friends did. I cared more than what any of my I didn't really have death metal friends, but any of my friends that were kind of outcasts, I cared a hell of a lot more than they ever did about what people around me thought. As an adult, and I'm not talking adult as in like 20 years old. I mean adult as in like in my 30s is when I started to really not care. Hence why I paint my nails. Hence why I'm so open about wearing a wig, because like I don't care, because in the end, anybody who's making fun of me, they're the pathetic ones who their life is so meaningless that they have to find something to make fun of somebody who has nothing to do with them. Right? Like me wearing a wig and somebody making fun of me for it, it just shows how pathetic your life is, because it's not like I'm forcing you to wear it, right? Like if I'm forcing you to wear the wig, then I can see you getting defensive about it. But if I'm not asking you to do anything with it, I'm just wearing it for me, then fine. Now, if I'm wearing it and it looks terrible, like it, you know, like those guys that are in their 60s and wear like a jet black wig and their whole hair is gray, and it's really obvious it's fake, in that case, yeah, maybe point it out so maybe they could try to do something to make it look a bit more natural, because the whole point of a wig is to feel natural. But like outside of that, my choices with my body don't affect you in any way. But it's taken me a really long time to learn that. It was not an easy thing, and I still struggle. Obviously, I'm a content creator, so a big part of my persona overall is to get acceptance from other people. But like I did a video recently. You went through your whole emo goth phase. Because it's a lot cheaper. Yeah, exactly, right? Like I was a cue ball for a really long time too, and it's definitely a lot cheaper. It's a lot easier, and I liked the fact that I didn't have to pay for somebody to do my hair. Thank you for the GGs, Brian. I appreciate that. You were a metalhead and you still are? Yeah, lots of people are. Lots of people, you know, they embrace it and they love it. Yeah, SX, I love Minecraft. It's so relaxing. Lots of people are, you know, in that world. Now, I never grew up in it, and a big part of me not having any exposure to it, which is what makes me not interested in it, is, see, this is the problem with my farm. They're all stuck up there. They're all stuck up there, and I can't get them down. A big part of it is that I'm an immigrant, and my parents didn't listen to that kind of music. So I grew up not listening to anything that my friends listened to. You know, like my friends could name a Led Zeppelin song, even if they weren't into rock, they could name a Led Zeppelin song. My friends knew, you know, ZZ Top and stuff. I didn't learn about those guys until I was a teenager playing Rock Band. You know, there are songs that I had no idea what they were. Because my parents didn't listen to that stuff, so it wasn't in my library of music that I listened to. So I never even was exposed to being a metalhead. So I never became one. Hey Tyler, how's it going, man? My day's going okay. My day is going okay. You know, it started off all messed up. I screwed up and deleted a bunch of stuff that I needed for my stream and didn't realize I deleted it. So it was a bit of a panic attack at the beginning of the stream. But my day's going well outside of that. How's your day going, man? You do miss your mohawk? Yeah, and that was it. That was the big part for me, is I always liked doing my hair. I liked, you know, getting haircuts. I liked styling my hair differently. I liked putting product in my hair and, you know, just all of that. And I couldn't do it anymore. So even though it was really nice to not have to get my hair cut professionally, to just like buy a $25 shaving kit and just like shave my head every couple of days and not have to worry about it, really nice. Being able to like get up and just wash my face and go out the door if I was like late or whatever, really, really nice. But I just missed having hair. So like it's for me, right? But some people act like by me wearing a wig, it's saying something about them. You know what I mean? Like there are guys out there who are balding or have lost their hair who almost get offended that I'm wearing a wig because they think that it's me judging them for not wearing one. And for me, it's like, no, I want one for me. And like, if I'm going to talk about it or if I'm going to suggest it to somebody, which I rarely ever do, but if they bring up the fact that they feel bad about losing their hair or whatever, yeah, I'll bring it up. But like the only reason I would ever say anything is because I found it to be such a great experience. Right? Like I found it to be really good for my self-esteem, really good for my own mental health. And so like I would suggest it to somebody else in that kind of mentality, not because like you shouldn't be bald, being bald is bad. Because I was bald for years. But some people act like that's what I'm trying to do by just wearing a wig or like by wearing nail polish, right? The amount of guys that'll comment on my videos that be like, all I had to see was the nail polish and now I know what you are. And it's like, you're upset that I'm wearing this? Like, are you the kind of person that gets mad because I'm wearing the wrong brand of jeans? Like, that you're offended that I wear the wrong brand of jeans? Like, I'm wearing this. It has nothing to do with you. I'm not telling you to do it. I'm not saying anything to you. Right? Like, it's as ridiculous as going to a restaurant and you're eating a hamburger, but somebody else is having soup and you get mad at them because they're having soup. Let them have their soup. Who cares? right? But some people genuinely take it as an attack on them because they are so fragile and so weak that they can't see somebody else doing something that makes them happy. Because and some people will come back at me and be like, that's just like a stupid mumbo jumbo excuse. But no, because like if you try to offend somebody, right, you're not going to offend somebody by saying something that you don't find offensive. You know, like if somebody, like, okay, you like death metal, right? For DM in particular. But Brian, you said you're also a metalhead. You guys like metal. If I were to say to you, whatever, fucking metalhead, would that be offensive to you? Of course not, because you like it, so it's not offensive to you, right? And you wouldn't say that to somebody else because to you it's not offensive, right? And so if you found that offensive, like if you would be offended if somebody called you a metalhead, then yeah, you would use it as an offense because you would find it offensive. So like when somebody makes fun of me for wearing my nail polish, it's because they're too weak, because they would be offended if somebody made fun of them for what they're wearing. So like it's very much a tied connection of like they wouldn't find that as a way to insult somebody unless it would insult them. And so if they get insulted by what they wear and they're making fun of me for wearing what I like, it's because they're too weak to wear what they like, right? But it's just so weird to watch how some people get so deeply offended by somebody wanting to do what they want, right? But that's one of the things that I found, at least from the people around me, I found that metalheads, emo kids, theater kids, weird kids, all had in common is that although it was hard and, you know, getting bullied, sometimes physically, being made fun of all the time, and, you know, as you get older, you learn to kind of accept it and you kind of learn that you wouldn't want to be there anyway. But like when you're young, it's hard when like your whole class gets invited to a birthday and you're the only one that doesn't get invited because you're the weird kid, right? That happened to me a lot. But now as an adult, I'm like, I wouldn't want to be there anyway. They didn't like me. Why would I want to hang out with people who didn't like me? But at the time, all I wanted was to have friends. But the emo kids, the weird kids, they were much quicker at learning that. Like they wouldn't want to be surrounded by people that didn't like them. They wouldn't want to be surrounded by people who were so worried about what other people thought that they couldn't have fun. I didn't learn that until now. So it's like, yeah, there's definitely a lot to look up to for like the metalheads, the emo kids, the theater kids, but it wasn't all sunshine and lollipops back then when we were the teenagers going through it. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, shoes are shoes. Exactly. Yeah, Brian, and that's it, right? And that's the thing. It's a big part of it. SX is. There's also, depending on how old you are, there's a very different mentality nowadays versus how it was back then. Social media, it's very hard for younger generations to understand. Even younger millennials aren't fully in grasp. I'm an older millennial, right? I think millennials start at like 84. I'm an 86 baby. I'm like at the very, very end of millennials or beginning of millennials. I grew up before social media was a thing. Like my first social media thing, MySpace was around for a long time, but I wasn't part of MySpace. I had ICQ and MSN, which wasn't really a social media space. It was more like texting. But my first like real social media page was Facebook. And I didn't get that till I was 20. Like I went on a date with a girl that I went to high school with and she showed me Facebook and that's how I got onto Facebook. And so like I didn't have any social media presence, so I didn't have that exposure. If you look at videos from like when I was a teenager in like the early 2000s, all of us, we had a unique look fashion wise, but none of us dressed well for our bodies. None of the girls did their makeup properly. Nobody looked good. Our hair was horrendous. We had like the really wet spikes and like it didn't look good. But where else were you going to learn? You would see a magazine. There was no YouTube to show you step by step on how to do your hair properly, right? So social media really impregnated our world in a much deeper way than a lot of younger generations realize. So going back to like the whole shoe thing is we had very different standards of what made you cool and what didn't. So like if you didn't wear the right shoes, you weren't cool. If you didn't wear the right brand of clothing, you weren't cool. The neighborhood I grew up with, I grew up in a very, very poor part of my city. You know, it was all like the foster kids, people living on government housing, like government assistance and stuff. We had police on our street every week. It was not a good neighborhood. But I surrounded myself with a lot of people who had money. And so I learned different fashion trends. And so like there was, I don't know if it existed anywhere else, if it was a Canadian brand or not, but there was a store brand called Stitches. And it would sell, you know, fashion stuff. But if you were in the know, Stitches were what the poor wannabe ghetto kids wore. But like the true like gangster kids, they wore way more expensive stuff like FUBU. FUBU at the time was huge. I think Champion now has become like a brand, but back when we were a kid, if you wore Champion, you were the poor kid. You were made fun of it for it. And so like there were certain brands that you would wear and certain brands you wouldn't. Like H&M obviously makes really cheap stuff. There's a lot of issues with it, with like the whole way that they do their company. I know there's a lot of issues. I'm not much into fashion, so I can't talk in detail, but I know there's issues with H&M. But like for a while there, if you wore H&M, it was fine because they had stylish clothing. It was just budget friendly. When I was a kid, if you shopped at a place like H&M, you were gonna be bullied relentlessly because you bought the cheap stuff. Whereas now you can buy cheap stuff. It's all about being frugal, buying used old stuff and all this stuff, and you can make it look good. In my day, no, you wanted to wear the newest stuff, and like you'd get bullied for it. But it was because we didn't have social media to kind of open our eyes to how cool things were. When I was a kid, if you liked anime, you were a loser. I loved anime growing up, but I hung out with a bunch of Asian guys, so at least I kind of had that in where it's like I'm hanging out with a bunch of like Vietnamese and Japanese guys. Most of my friends were Vietnamese, but they were all into like Chinese movies and Japanese movies and anime and stuff. So it was like, well, it's acceptable that I liked it because all my friends are Asian. But if you were like a white kid that liked anime and you didn't have Asian friends, you were seen as a loser back then. Whereas now everybody pretends to like anime just to be cool. So it's like it's a very different mindset. So when Brian says wearing Nikes would get him beat up, or not wearing Nikes would get him beat up, 100% accurate. Even though now we look at it as, well, they're just shoes, who cares? In the time, it mattered, and it was really stupid. It was really, really stupid. MSN, yeah. I just threw things at the wall to see what sticks. Yeah, DM, the skater kids, they did a lot of band t-shirts, and that's another thing that's kind of become, or the trend kind of died now. Okay, I think my shovel's good now. The trend kind of died now, but there was a little while there where like the rich popular kids on TikTok would go and interview random people wearing band t-shirts and ask them if they knew who the band was, and then they would ask them like obscure questions about a band. Like if somebody was wearing like a Lynyrd Skynyrd shirt, they'd be like, well, what was their first album? Now wearing a band shirt is just a fashion statement. Back then, wearing a band shirt was because you actually listened to the band and liked it. So like metalheads wore band shirts because they actually went and saw the band and bought the shirt at the show. And now you buy these vintage style band shirts just because they're cool vintage style band shirts. Social media has really, it's changed the world in a really, really significant way that I think unless you saw the change, it's really hard to grasp how much of a change there was. There really, really was. I know, Tyler. I know. I can't. I'm not cool enough. I can't pull it off. I can't pull it off. I wish I could. Actually. I don't think I have any, but maybe... Let me look real quick. They might have taken their page down, though. Oh, it's dark. It's dark. Okay, let me... It's too dark. Is there any other ones? I know they wanted to keep it secret, so they didn't really post anything. Yeah, they don't really have that much. Okay, but what about me? Do I have any? Just by some fluke. I don't think I do, but maybe? Maybe, I don't know. Because because once I was involved in the show, I was no longer taking pictures of the show because I was in the show. Although I did set my camera on auto shoot, so there could have been something that was caught. I deleted most of them mainly because I at the time, I was single and I would be dating online and stuff. And almost always the women that I was meeting would want to like add me on Facebook because they wanted to make sure I wasn't a creep. And how do you explain to somebody who's not into theater that there's a bunch of pictures of you in lingerie? It doesn't really bode well for a future relationship. So I deleted a bunch of my old pictures. I think that's the only one that I have. Okay. For everybody. No, that's not the one. I deleted it, really? Image. No, I don't have image 5. Wait, I thought I did. What? There it is, okay. Okay, not this picture. Not this picture. This is the only picture I have of me in the cape. Everybody else can't see it. Everybody else can't see it. Hold on for TikTok. Image 5. This is the only picture I have of me on stage wearing my cape. Tyler commented there that disappointed that I'm not wearing a cape. I was making a comment about how I did the Rocky Horror Show and my entrance was me in a cape. That's the only picture. Uh-oh. Okay, sound's still on. It's the only picture of me in a cape that I have. Because I would come in like that, there'd be a big black spot, or big bright spotlight in front of me. Everything else would be pitch black, so it would be more of my silhouette than anything. And I would sing the intro of the song dressed like this. This is for the Rocky Horror Show, for those who don't know. It's a show where the lead character is a transvestite and dresses in women's lingerie, and that's how the whole show is done. And then I would do my reveal and a bunch of stuff would happen. And then this is the only other real picture I have of me in this timeline wearing the costume. You can see my silhouette. You can kind of see that I'm wearing a corset and stuff and no pants. Here's where I'm holding Eddie's body. If you don't know the show, Frankenfurter is an alien. And it's a show from the 70s, so hopefully I'm not spoiling it for you. Frankenfurter is an alien, and then it turns out that he's got this guy that he was in love with named Eddie, who he freezes because Eddie didn't love him back. And then Eddie thaws halfway through the show, and then I chase him with a chainsaw and chop him into bits. And so that's me walking back on stage with Eddie's body in a bag to show off, because the one girl, the blonde you can kind of see in the middle of the group there, the short one, she's supposed to be in love with him. And so I'm showing her, as in, like, if you cross me, this is what'll happen to you too. And so at this point, she runs off crying because Eddie's dead. And I laugh because I killed him. And so, like, that's what I... All right, see you later, DM. Thank you for hanging out. I appreciate you being here. Stewie, how you doing, man? How are things going? All right, SX, see you later. Thanks for stopping in. I appreciate you hanging out. The highlight of my day. Oh, Tyler. Yeah, the movie's great. So funny enough, when I auditioned for the show, I had never seen the movie. I had seen pictures of Tim Curry dressed as Frankenfurter. But that was like my extent of it. I had seen a couple of pictures of him. I knew Tim Curry from a bunch of other movies. Like my connection to Tim Curry is Congo. That's where I remember Tim Curry from. Most people think Tim Curry and they think Frankenfurter. I think Congo. And so I had seen him. I knew who he was. I knew what Frankenfurter looked like. I'd seen, costumes and stuff, but I didn't know what the show was about. And so I auditioned and I got Eddie as my character, because the director didn't know me. So she didn't want to give me any like big role. And so she's like, I'll give him Eddie, see how it goes. And then, the area that I lived in, they almost always picked the same Frankenfurters. There was 3 guys basically that always did Frankenfurter. One guy named David, one guy named Daniel, and I don't know who the third guy was, but he did it all the time at this like dinner theater place that's really famous in my city. They closed down after the pandemic because they couldn't keep open. They were already kind of struggling. But they were the same Frankenfurters all the time. So I got cast as Eddie. And I was fine with it. And, they were like, oh, it's one song. You won't need to be, committed for as long as everybody else. So it's fine. You could literally just rehearse the one song and then we'll get you to be one of like the stage hands or whatever. And so I went home and I watched it and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. And not even the content. It's just as a musician, I'm pretty snotty. Like I'm a snob when it comes to performance. And so I was like, the rock music is really basic 50s style rock. The lyrics are not very good. Like, it's not a complex show at all. I don't want to do this. And so I ended up dropping out. And I didn't do it because I watched it at like 1 in the afternoon by myself in my living room. And I was just like, this is the stupidest show ever. Why are people excited for this? So I didn't do it. But my friends were in it, so I went and supported them and watched them. And then the audience got involved. And my mind completely changed immediately. And then I was like, I need to be in this next time. So then I auditioned for the next year. And then I got Eddie again. So I did Eddie that year. And I loved it. And then my friends opened up a theater. And they did it. Just making sure I'm not missing anything. Oh, you're at Ferality. Nice. How is it, man? I've been watching a lot of commentary stuff, like those people that like talk about drama on YouTube or talk about like the rise and fall. And one of the videos was about one of the furry conventions. The one that like they got banned from the hotels because there was a bunch of like shenanigans that were done by like a really small group of toxic furries. Just funny that you mentioned that when that was like something I watched like 2 days ago. I hope you have fun though. I hope you have fun. Wait, what happened? Oh, you thought my camera had darkened out? No. It was me on stage. Anyways, so I did Eddie and I loved it. And then the show ended, but the theater, it was their farewell show. The theater, the property got bought out by Chinese investors and they were going to build a big condo there. And this was 10 years ago, a little bit less than 10 years, maybe 8 years ago. That lot is still empty. They tore down the theater and they never built anything there, ever. They just kept the property and the theater was destroyed. Really heartbreaking for the community. Anyways, so my friends decided, well, this theater's closed. We're going to open our own. My friend's dad owns a restaurant, and he had a big open space upstairs that they would use for like events and stuff for families. And so she built a small theater up there with her now husband, at the time just her friend. And they were going to put on Rocky Horror as their launch show with the idea of it's a very easy sell. The cast doesn't have to be, super trained to do it. So like they could easily find some people to just play the roles. And they already knew the one guy, David, who was like one of the go-to Franks. And he had suggested that he would invest into the company and everything. And so they were set. So they called me and they asked me to be Eddie again. At the time I was working at a hospital. I didn't really have a good schedule. It's when I really started to stop my acting dreams because life, I couldn't afford to do it, and I needed to worry about my own life. So I was like, yeah, I'll do Eddie, whatever, no big deal. So we start rehearsing, and I'm not really there for rehearsals. I show up once in a while to do photos, and then they'll get me to sing the song and walk through the blocking, and that's about it. 4 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks before closing, before opening night, the owner of the theater, of the property, she finds out that the guy who was going to play Frankenfurter had borrowed money from his parents to invest into the company, but didn't invest it into the company and instead just pocketed it and then blamed the theater. So when his parents were asking about, financial information, I don't know if it was records or what, he turned around and washed his hands of it and told the theater or told his parents that the theater was the one in charge, but never told the theater what was going on. So when his parents contacted the theater, they realized he had stolen all this money. So when they said, hey, you need to give us this money because now your parents are demanding it back and I'm not going to pay them for something I didn't take, he threatened to walk out. And so he's like, well, I'm not going to do the show. Without me, there is no show. And he walked out. There was a whole huge mess. It was a huge, huge deal. So the owner called me crying. Because obviously it's a few weeks before opening night and you can't like fully recast a show and redo all the blocking and like do a whole bunch of work in such a short amount of time. So she calls me and she's like, look, can you do me a huge favor? can you just play Frankenfurter for a few weeks while I find somebody and we train them and all this. I think it was like 2 to 3 weeks. It was a lot shorter. It was a really, really short time. And she's like, and we'll get a new cast member while you take over, just so we're not left floundering, because the show has to go. And they've invested a bunch of money and all this. And I was like, yeah, fine. I'll do it for a few weeks. In that agreement, I ended up getting fired from work because they weren't happy that I was wanting to do this. And so, not that I got fired, I had a contract where like I was on call, and if they didn't call me within 6 months, then I just lost my position. So they just stopped calling me. So I started doing the theater show, and then I kind of just got sucked in. Little fun fact, 2 weeks before opening, literally 2 weeks before opening, I fell down and broke both my ankles. And it was not fun. And she was in a panic. The owner was in a panic because I was the backup for the guy who they had, and now the backup broke his ankles. And I told them, you know, I'll figure it out. And she's like, yeah, like we'll get you up there. We'll like design a cane. If the doctor gives you the okay, we can like bedazzle your boot that you're gonna wear, because the one break was a lot worse than the other. The other one was just a hairline fracture. She's like, we'll like bedazzle your boot so you can be on stage with the boot and blah blah blah. And so the doctor's decision was that I should be in bed for 2 weeks, I should be on crutches for 2 weeks, and then I should use a cane for 4, to give my leg, you know, some type of time. This was like his fast forward way of dealing with my healing. I stayed in bed for 1 week. I rehearsed with crutches for the last week, and then opening night I was going to go on with my cane. I left the cane backstage and I just walked on without the cane. Caused permanent damage. I am now in constant pain because of it. But it was worth it. The show went on to be really, really good. About 2 weeks into opening night, the way that I would die at the end of the show, sorry, spoiler alert, Frankenfurter dies at the end. The way that I would die at the end of the show, it was in the middle aisle of the theater, and Riff and Magenta would be standing like by my feet, but Riff would actually be like his one leg on each side of me, so almost straddling me, but I'm laying down, he's standing up. And then at the very end, one of the last things he would say, it's just a jump to the left, and then a step to the right or whatever, and he would stomp his foot as he would say it. And the one night, a couple of weeks into the run, he stomped right on the worst ankle of both. My ankle swelled right up and went black and blue instantly. Thankfully, it was the last night of the week, so I had a few nights to kind of ice my ankle and deal with it. But oh my god, he made my tears roll. He made my tears roll so quick because it was so painful when he stomped on my ankle. Whew, it was not fun, but it was a lot of good memories. I did the show 3 years in a row where I was fully Frankenfurter. 1 year where I was Frankenfurter on and off, because they hired another guy who couldn't do it consistently, so I would do it when he couldn't. And then the last year, I wasn't actually involved, but their riffraff, who was the other owner, needed some time off, so he got really sick or something, and then they called me at like 1 PM to go on stage that evening at 6. And I did it. It was fun. It was great. I had a lot of really good experiences doing that show. But the live, if you've never seen the live production is so worth seeing. It's such a game changer when it comes to theater shows. I wish I had the recordings that I had taken of the show to show what I did, but I didn't have very many recordings of my performances, which is kind of a bummer. Holy crap, I've been streaming for like an hour and I've barely just cleaned up this area. Right now it's a bit boring, not much happening till after the opening ceremonies. Nice. Nice, man. What do they do for the opening ceremonies? God, I couldn't do the furry thing when it comes to like the actual costumes. I mean, the furry fandom's not really it's of no interest to me, so I don't get it, but I just couldn't do it like in a mechanical level. I've worn enough costumes on stage that I hate it. I can't even imagine wearing something like a furry costume where it's so much more like, it's a big ass head, it's all fuzzy. Oh no, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. When I did Rocky Horror and I was wearing that leather costume, we were doing 4 shows a week. I was wearing that leather costume. By the 4th night, oh my god, was my costume ever ripe. And it was made of that fake leather, so we couldn't really wash it. You'd have to kind of wash it by hand. So by the 4th day, my costumes were so ripe. It was so embarrassing because I'd have like, we had men and women in the show, and both of them would be like crawling all over me and kissing my neck and stuff on stage. And it was like, I smell so bad and you're supposed to act like I'm sexy. It's so gross. So I couldn't do the furry thing because of the costume. Ugh. That's one part I don't miss about the theater thing, is the smelly costumes. Ugh. Pretty much welcome you and give an hour-long speech. Holy crap. I don't have the attention span for that either. Definitely don't have the attention span for that. Come on, come on. It's like right now, I'm not, we're planning my dad's like farewell celebration of life type thing. I'm not looking forward to it because of like all the ceremonial part of it, you know, like having to talk to people, and we're going to perform because my band, it was my dad's idea. It was his dream. He was in a band when he was younger. When he first got to Canada, he was in a mariachi band. We're not Mexican, but there was a Mexican guy that started a mariachi band and he was in it. And he was the lead singer, and this was when he was like 21, 22 years old. And then a few years later, he started another band, playing the type of music we played in the band that we had. But they were still young, right? They were in their early 20s, but none of them had ever been professional musicians. So like they would plunk out the music, but they never had that professional air about them. And so they had prepared, they only knew like 6 songs, I think is what they said. Between 6 and 12 songs, I think is what my dad told me, that they had prepared. And they decided to throw a whole party. Now, if you don't know much about Latin music, each set is roughly 12 to 15 songs, depending on how long your set's going to be. And most of our performances have 2 sets. So you're looking at like minimum of 30 songs that you want to have in your back pocket, because sometimes you'll play certain songs and it won't be the right crowd and they won't like them, so you want to like switch on the fly to music that might hit a little bit better, because our goal when we're performing is for people to dance. It's not to watch the band. And so my dad got together with his friends to do this band, and one of the guys had been flirting with one of the women that was in the band. They were both in the band, and they decided to show up early to set up their stuff. And because they were flirting, they were all joking around and whatever, he ended up playing all the different instruments as a joke, and he detuned the bass and the guitar, and erased some of the effects or something from one of the keyboards. And so when the band got on stage and started getting ready, everything was not done right. And of course they weren't professionals, so they didn't, like, none of them were like musicians that were trained, so they didn't have like tuners and stuff. They tuned way beforehand with the idea of like, it's fine. They didn't expect to have to tune on stage, and they all panicked and they didn't end up performing. So my dad's memories in being a musician weren't very good. But then my band started, and I had way more experience because I went to theater school and stuff. So I learned, the rehearsal process and all that stuff. And so I was able to kind of guide us to have more of that professionalism. And then my dad's adventurous side, he started telling everybody he had a band at home, and it wasn't supposed to be a band. It was just supposed to be us, like him and his kids, just playing music for the fun of it. And then there was a Mexican Independence Day party that they were having, and my dad had told his friends that he had this band, so they invited us to play. And so we went and played, and it was like, we were a brand new band, so they only wanted us to play a couple of songs, and that was it. So we prepped, 4 or 5 songs, and well, we prepped 2 or 3 songs for the night, and then we knew 4 or 5 songs. And then they had hired a mariachi band because it was a Mexican Independence Day. And the guy from the mariachi band, when they signed the contract, it was supposed to be, I think it was an 11-piece mariachi band. So like violins, trumpets, the guitars, the big bass guitar, the singer, like it was going to be a big thing. And then he shows up with him, a trumpet player, and a violin player. And he's drunk off his ass, like to the point where like he fell off the stage at one point. He told them to play the wrong song, And then he started, so he had a karaoke backing, and then he started singing the wrong lyrics to a different song, even though the music was playing of the song he was supposed to be singing. Like, he was so drunk. So the owner came up after we had done our little set. The owner came up, he's like, can you guys go back on stage and play again? And we're like, we know like 4 or 5 songs. He goes, then repeat them. And the one song we knew, the one romantic song, because the audience obviously knew the party had, you know, gone off the rails. The audience was way more than willing to accept us repeating the songs. The one romantic song, I played it 4 times that night because I didn't know anything else. So the band was my dad's like pride and joy. And then eventually we got to the point where, you know, we were performing in front of thousands, and we were, you know, we had over 75 songs in our repertoire that we could just pull out at any time. And so we started doing quite a bit with the band. So for his celebration of life, we're going to perform again. You know, we're going to be obviously missing my dad. Our conga player passed away too. So it's going to be a really, really stilted, put together thing. I'm going to pre-record some of the instruments that we're not going to be able to have live, just to have it there, but as like a memory and as like a farewell to my dad. You know, even with the plan of like, I've got his bass, and because once he had a stroke, he was never going to play it again. And I did play the bass in the band. So we're actually going to set up the bass on stage. We're going to rent a separate bass, and I'm going to set up his bass on stage with his ashes. So it's like he's performing with us even though he's not, you know, as like a final, this is the last time the band is going to be together and we will never perform again, because it was never official. It was always just, we just kind of stopped playing. And so my dad always had the dream that we would get back on stage and perform again. So like this will be the official goodbye. But I'm not looking forward to the whole ceremony thing. That's what I was getting at, is I'm not looking forward to the rest of the ceremony outside of the performance. Not all furries wear costumes, just some wear the head and the hand paws. Yeah. That would be, I wouldn't even want to do the head. I'd be one of those ones that wear like the little headbands, you know what I mean? But I just don't get it, so I've never found like a draw to it. So it's kind of like the cosplay thing. Like that's the closest I can even find myself being attracted to dressing up at all, is cosplays. And even with cosplays, I'm kind of like, I want to do it, but like I don't really understand like the level of commitment some people have to it. You know what I mean? Like they'll spend thousands on a cosplay, and I'm just like, no, if I'm gonna dress up, I want to do it for fun, but I want to do it for fun for like pictures or a video or something, not just for the fun of doing it. But that's, I'm not saying that like they're weird or wrong for doing it. I'm just saying it's not something that's interesting to me. Kind of like how like Call of Duty just isn't interesting to me. It's just not something I enjoy. Preston, how you doing, man? You should try performing with a VR headset on. It's not that's not the draw that I have towards performance. I mean, you've done theater, right? It's a very different energy. Plus, I like to perform with other people. I don't really like the solo performance thing. The only time I like being solo is with streams. But I don't really like the solo performance thing, because for a long time, after the band ended, for a long time, my dad kept like kind of suggesting that I like start a singing career. You know, go to the same gigs that we used to do with the band and just sing with a backing track or whatever. But I don't like the solo thing. I liked the challenge of having a live band behind me and having things go wrong and having to be on the fly to fix it. I like, because I'm a sound engineer, I like the control you have over sound. Whereas like when you're in VR, you don't have that same level of control of like the effects you add on the voice, the amplification, all that kind of stuff. Plus I like the energy of live audiences, which is like the big thing with Latin music, which is why I've never had a draw to watch concerts for like American bands and stuff. Like there were a couple that I would have wanted to see, but not very often. Like even right now I'm heartbroken because Dragon Ball is coming to Canada. They're going to be playing, it's like an orchestra playing all the Dragon Ball theme music, and I want to see it so bad. And it's like $250 for the tickets. I'm not going to pay $250 to go watch a band perform. So it's just out of the question for me, but it's something I would like to see, but that's like the only thing. But that's more about listening versus anything else. But outside of that, like I don't really find the draw to Western bands and performances. Whereas like Latin music is a lot more about dancing. Like I've gone to see so many live performances from bands from my home country, and I'll watch them for a while, but most of the time it's me dancing. It's not actually watching the band. And so performing in VR to me is as interesting as listening to music is. It's just not, to me, is not what I want as a performer. Zero interest, zero draw. Because it doesn't fulfill the things that I like as an artist. Cover, how's it going? Welcome. Preston, Minecraft is going well. Time is going by really quickly without me realizing it. I've been streaming for an hour and a half right now. Actually, no, an hour and a half right now, and all I've cleared is this little area. I had to cut down a few more trees because I had like random, like this, like floating trees. But all I've cleared is this. I want to make some farms. This might be big enough. I'm just going to flatten it out a little bit further. But it's a slow process. I'm glad that I'm doing it on stream because I can talk and be distracted, but holy crap, is it ever a slow process. But it's going well. Had a bit of a technical hiccup at the beginning of the stream. I accidentally deleted all of my stream overlays. All of like the stuff that was around my windows and all that, all of it got deleted. I say got deleted. I deleted all of it accidentally without paying attention until I started the stream. And then I had to like try to panic put it back together. And I deleted it from everywhere. Like I don't have any backups of it, I don't think. So I'm going to search through a few of my hard drives after the stream is done, but I may have to redo all of my overlays manually again, which is kind of a bummer, you know? Have you ever played Minecraft, Preston? Yeah, see, and that's a little bit different. That's a little bit more of a like that for me that does make sense to do something like that, you know, to have multiple people. It's like the stand-up comedy thing, right? There's in the metaverse thing that they have, there are certain rooms that do stand-up comedy, and it's like in that case I get it, because like I can watch a comedy show and the comedian is actually live and you can have your like virtual avatar watching or whatever. But like for me, because of the type of music that I play, because of the type of performance that I put on, there is literally zero draw or benefit to doing it in VR. It's actually a huge drawback doing it in VR, because the biggest part of my performance was the audience dancing. Like there was a couple of things that we had with my band that were like intertwined with our performances, and people knew that that's what they were going to get when they came to watch us. Was that we had written a song. It's not a good song. It's a song that you know, in all honesty, is offensive. But culturally, it's just the way that the music kind of gears itself. It's also culturally, the Latino community is still a little bit behind when it comes to inclusivity and sensitivity and stuff. So it's not a song I would write now, but it's a song that I wrote, you know, 15 years ago. But it had a dance to it. And so like everybody knew the dance, and the fun of it was to get people to come on stage and dance the dance with us while we were singing it. There was also another thing that we would do. There was a song that was really famous back in like the 2000s called La Bomba. I don't know if people remember that song. It was when reggaeton first started to really blow up. And we would do that rhythm for that song to a totally different song that we were playing. We would add that rhythm halfway through, like a musical break. And I would bring people up on stage to dance it with us. I would do like the steps. I'd be like one hand on your head, one hand on your hip. And then, you know, you slowly gyrate going down, slowly gyrate going up. Obviously I would do it in rhythm, and it rhymed in Spanish. But that was kind of one of the things, and we would pull a big joke because like we had CDs and stuff that we recorded, and so what we would do is I would actually pull up women on stage, usually 4 or 5 women on stage, and we would all do it. I'd be standing in the middle of them, and we would all do the step together, and then I would pull 4 or 5 men on stage after the women. And the whole thing was supposed to be, it was a dance-off. Who were better, the men or the women? And we were going to do the dance, and then I would turn the men around so our asses would all be facing the audience. And that was like the big joke, right? That I'd be getting all these men to come on stage and shake their asses for the audience. And then in the end, I would give like the best dancers, the men or the women, a CD or whatever. You can't do that in VR. You can't get people on stage to shake their ass in front of an audience in VR. You can't get people on stage to sing the song with you in VR. Or like there were times where we were performing and somebody would run up to the stage and be like, oh, I can play the song, can you guys accompany me? And then they would play the song while we were on stage. You can't do stuff like that in VR. And like my genre of music, that was like our bread and butter, is the audience participation, the audience dancing. And like I said, our big goal was to get the audience to dance. I would do gigs where there would be 400 people in the audience, and if nobody danced, it was a bad night. Whereas like I would have friends who played rock music and they would be ecstatic that 20 people were at the bar they were playing at. They weren't there to see them. They were just at the bar drinking. And they were ecstatic that there were 20 people. And for me, it's like there were 400 last night and nobody danced. And my friends couldn't even imagine performing in front of 400 people. And 400 to me was whatever. 120 was like our bare minimum. So it's just a very different style of performance. So VR just wouldn't work for us, like in any way. And it goes back to a big draw, and this is something that like Western music doesn't really have anymore. Maybe in the 70s they had it, but they don't have it anymore. It's really not out there, is the live band component. Listening to pop music nowadays, they'll have a live band, but it's always a guitar, bass, and drums. Like that's pretty much what it is. And then any other instrument is done by the keyboard, or it's a backing track. Right? And a backing track is mastered, and mastered music, although it's, unless you do sound engineering, it may not make sense. But backing tracks sound artificial. They don't sound real. Even if it's a real trumpet that was recorded playing the music authentically, it doesn't sound real. When you have a live band and you have a live trumpet in front of you, there is a very unique sound balance that comes out of it. Or having live timbales, hearing that snare, hearing the hi-hat, is very different than hearing a pre-recorded hi-hat or snare. That's why we didn't really use digital drum sets, because they were pre-recorded. And VR will never, ever, ever be able to do that. Ever. Impossible. And so like you'll always have that digitized sound to it. Even if it is a live band playing with like fancy microphones and stuff, it'll never be the same as a live performance. And with my band, that was the biggest draw, is to watch the live band, because there were Latin bars that played the same music we were playing on CD. But the draw was watching the live band with a real trumpet and real saxophone and all of that in front of you. You know what I mean? So like VR for like what you're doing absolutely makes sense. For me, it would just never be. Even if they came up to me and it was all set up and there was going to be a huge audience, I would just instantly say no. It just wouldn't be for me. You have not? So Preston, yes, you can what? Alphagetties? Yes, you can what? Yeah, exactly, Tyler. It's that whole thing, right? It's like when you do go watch a rock band, rock as a generic term for like metal and emo and all that like over-encompassing style of music that relies heavily on like 2 guitars, maybe a keyboard, a bass, and drums. Like that's the heart and soul of that style of music. When you watch it live, the guitar is going to sound pretty much the same because it's amplified, right? It's digitized through the pedals and all that. But the drum set is what makes it sound live, right? It's the drum set that makes it live, because especially rock bands, they use an acoustic drum set that they mic up, but you feel all the little changes with a real drum set that you can have. Because even if it's a huge venue with 5,000 people, a drum is really loud. It still has that little bit of extra authentic sound to it. Whereas when you're with a backing track, it's EQ'd, there's effects added to it, the volumes are set specifically for each part of the instrument, so it's too perfect, which is what makes it sound digitized. Whereas live, it will never be perfect. One of the things that we always talked about in my band, because we went through a bunch of different musicians throughout the years. One of the things we always talked about when they would get like upset that they were making mistakes or whatever is like the mistake is part of the live performance. That adds to the realism of it, is that there is a mistake. Having it be perfect destroys it. And that's what takes away from the realism. You know what I mean? Hello, Red vs. Blue. How you doing? Welcome. That's cool. That's cool. But that kind of dancing is very different than our dancing, Stewie. Like our dancing is literally like it inspired the ballroom dance, but like it's salsa dancing style, right? Like you're holding hands with somebody else, you're spinning, you're turning, and you're dipping. You can't do that in VR. You can't. Even with body tracking, it's not going to be the same. And again, it's not the same as me being on stage watching people do that and being able to actually evaluate what's working and what isn't, because 100% of the time we would write a set list out in advance. We would rehearse the set list. Usually we would go in with about 32 songs is what we would write in our set list for a performance, and we would have it all ready, but we would always practice about 40 songs because we wanted 8 songs in our pocket in case of anything. And the 8 songs were almost always completely different than the ones that we were going to perform. Because in the Latino community especially, there are different genres of dance music, but outside of the different genres, there are different countries that do each genre slightly different. And so like, depending on who was in the audience, if it was more Colombian people, we were going to play more Colombian style. Our genre was called cumbia. We would play more Colombian style cumbia. But if we had Dominicans in the audience, then we were going to play merengue. But if we had people from El Salvador, we would play our style of cumbia. And so like each one was slightly different, even though it might have even been the exact same song. It was just a different variation of the song. And when you're in a live performance on stage, on the fly, you can change what songs you're going to be playing, and how the audience is reacting to it is like moment to moment. There have been times on stage with my band where we would literally be playing a song that we had practiced to do, 3 choruses of or whatever. And on the fly, I turned to my brother and be like, okay, just stop at this chorus, no more after that, because it just was not going well. Or it was going so well that I'd be like, one more, do it again. And live on stage doing that, which is something that although VR can emulate it decently, it's not the same. It really isn't. Unless you've been on stage in front of 5,000 people, with the hot spotlights in front of you, with giant 15-foot speakers on each side of you. It's hard to communicate how different it is versus doing a virtual style performance. Yeah, and Tyler, what you're saying with the drum solo, that's a huge part of it, because these guys are obviously like 100% professional musicians, right? Like they're actually good at what they do. We were like bubblegum and masking tape style musicians. Like we just kind of brute forced our way through the songs. But these guys are good musicians. These are the kind of guys that even though they are rock musicians, they can sit down and they can strum along to like a ballad. They can strum along to, a pop song, because they know their instrument so well. And a big part of with the live performance is when you get the audience going, you're able to freestyle a solo, and based on the energy that's being fed to you in that moment, it'll give you a different route to take as the soloist. I'm sure watching a live rock performance with, a deep drum solo in the middle of it, it's a drum solo nobody will ever hear again, and it's a drum solo that drummer may never pull out of their ass again, because the energy will never be exactly the same in that next performance. It's so cool. There's just something about live performances, but each genre has their own what am I trying to think of, like the word I'm trying to think of, their own goals and their own variant on what successful would be considered for a show, right? Like when I see footage of people at like a Taylor Swift concert, I don't get the appeal. I'm not saying like I don't get what's so popular about Taylor Swift. I mean, I don't get the appeal of paying $300 for a ticket to literally stand there and just watch. To me, that's just not exciting. I don't find that exciting for a live concert. But then like I had a friend who played more alternative rock, I guess it would be. It was between alternative rock and death metal. It was like a weird amalgamation. They were really good. They were really good musicians. Not my type of music, but I thought they were quite talented. And I went to go watch them once, and there was a huge mosh pit, and everybody was punching each other and kicking each other, and I was just like, I don't get this. How is this fun? But to him, that was like one of his most successful gigs because everybody was moshing, and I'm just like, I don't get it, right? But it's not my genre of music. I'm taking his opinion on it because that's his type of music, right? So it's kind of the same thing with the Latino community. There's very, very specific things we're looking for when we're performing, and if it doesn't happen, then to us, it's not a good gig. And the biggest one is watching people dance. Like that's the biggest thing that will tell us how good the show is the dancing that happens. And like some of the best gigs we ever had. And it was like the dumbest detail. And I'm going to say it, and I'm hoping people are going to understand that it's not intended as like a race thing or whatever. But like one of the moments that we were like, we're good at what we do. We were performing. It was a party. Like somebody just decided to have a concert. Basically, they were just throwing a party. It wasn't because for us, it wasn't that we were doing concerts. It wasn't like people were like, oh, they're playing, we're gonna go see them. It was by the end of it, but at the beginning, it was there's a party and there's a live band, and that's what it was. That these people would just want to throw a party, and we were just the talent that was gonna make the party fun. And so it was a party, open door at the front, and you could hear the music on the street from us playing or whatever. And these, I think it was 2, maybe 3 Japanese women who like barely spoke English. Like you could tell they were tourists here, because like they had the stereotypical tourist look, right? They walked in, they paid the ticket because they heard the music, and they danced all night. They danced horrendously. They had no idea what they were doing because it was very clear they had never experienced Latin music before. It just wasn't their niche, because there's apparently a really big Latin inspired community in Japan where they're really into like the Chicano culture and stuff. It's really strange to see a bunch of Japanese people dressed as Mexicans. It's so strange to see that. Strange because you would expect like a Latino community to be there and maybe some Japanese people mixed in, but it's like all Japanese people, no Latinos, and they're all dressed like Mexicans. It's wild. But they didn't have that experience. You could tell they weren't in our universe at all. But they danced the whole night, and they danced horrendously. But the fact that we got random people who were tourists to just walk in and come to this party for a band they never heard of, for a party they had nothing to do with, to us, that was an achievement. That was huge. And that's nothing else can really simulate that kind of an outcome in a performance. It was wild. It was the wildest experience. And it's something that for other styles of musician, it would kind of be like, okay, what's the big deal? But in our genre of music, dance is the most important part of all of it. We would do shows where there would be multiple bands performing, and your getting rehired for the next year's venue was based on how many people danced. And so like I did we had something called the Pupusa Festival. Pupusa is a type of food. We had something called the Pupusa Festival that they used to have once a year in the summer. And basically they would hire a whole bunch of bands and independent singers, and they would hire some like rock bands and stuff, because some of the Latino kids, they get involved in that, right? And they would play rock music. So they would hire rock bands. They've had rap artists and reggaeton artists and stuff come through. But most of it was Latin music like ours. And you would be hired again for the next year if the audience danced. If the audience didn't dance, the venue, the people that threw the party, they would see it as like you weren't the right fit and you're not going to come back next year. Or we would do gigs where like they would come up to us afterwards and be like, look, the party is dying. When you get on, please play your best stuff so you can get people dancing. Even though the venue was sold out, there were 300 people in the audience, people were eating and talking, but nobody was dancing. So the person throwing the party saw it as a complete failure. Whereas, like, you know, I've had friends who were losing their mind because there were 25 people at the bar they were at performing, and that maybe like one drunk couple got up on stage to dance with them, and it's like, to them that was out of this world. And I'm not saying that as in like we were so much better than them. It's just our standards were very, very different for what we were doing. There were also, you know, maybe 10 bands that did what we did, versus my friends who played rock that like every other guy was in a rock band. So the competition was a lot higher for them, so they had to work a lot harder to get a much smaller response. I'm doing okay, Chizat. How you doing? How are things going? Jack, how you doing, man? How are things? How's life? And Preston, back to what I was saying. Back to you saying you've never played this game. I don't know if you're still here. You might be. You might not be. But if you are, the Minecraft can be really boring if you're not in the right mindset for this type of game. It's one of the reasons I stayed away from Minecraft for years. I had a lot of audience members that wanted me to play this game, and I was just like, no, I need something to do. I can't just like build stuff. I don't care about building. And even now, to a degree, I'm not really a huge fan of building. But if you go into Minecraft with the idea of just exploring, and maybe don't look up any videos for a while, if you decide to try it, if you have like Game Pass or whatever, or sometimes it goes on for real cheap, but you literally just go in to just kind of explore and go through the growing pains of like learning how the game works, because some of the stuff is a little bit quirky. You could die really, really easily at times. There are some really unique moments with this. I don't know if you've ever played Subnautica, but it's like an easy mode of Subnautica, where like the most survival thing you have to worry about is eating and making sure you have armor and weapons and stuff. But like there was a time that I played it in VR when I first started, when I first really got hooked. And I've mentioned this before. I don't know if you've heard this story. And I had spent some time. I had built my little house, and I had a little farm. And the first house I built, I took a really long time. Like I added like little designs and all this stuff. And then I didn't really look anything up in the game, so I was trying to explore because I wanted to see how many different things I could find. Maybe I could find treasure and all that. And so I built a boat. And Minecraft, the world is pretty much built of like little islands, and then these rivers kind of unite everything. And so I just got on a boat and started traveling down the river to just see what I could find. And I traveled for about an hour, and this is all in VR. Traveling for about an hour, I found a couple of villages, and then my inventory was full after exploring a cave, and I had a bunch of iron, which is a pretty easy thing to find to build things with. But in the beginning of the game, it's a bit harder to find because your tools aren't very good at excavating, and you don't necessarily have it right in front of you. And the version of Minecraft I was working on didn't have the setup that it has now, so it was much more difficult to find iron when I first started. And so my inventory was full. I had a bunch of iron. I had found some armor and stuff, and I was really excited. And so I get back in the river, and I can't remember what direction my house is in. And at this point, I didn't know that you could have the coordinates on screen. And so I just started going down the river in the direction that I thought it was, all in VR. And it's about 2 a.m. I'm by myself at home, and you know, it's quiet, and I'm just in this world. And I'm traveling and traveling and traveling. And then, you know, I'm starting to panic because I don't know how to get back home. And all of my stuff is back there. And so I start feeling this like immense feeling of despair that I'm lost, even though I'm playing by myself. And then finally I see a village, and the village that was near my house was on a river, and it looked very similar, and I was so excited because I was like, the village is here. Here's the village. My house is just like 5 minutes down this river. Great. But it was nighttime. And so I was like, I'm going to go into the village and try to sleep. And I go into the village, and the village is completely abandoned. There is nobody there. This is no exaggeration. The feeling of loneliness that hit me in that moment. I'm on the side of this cliff. The village is completely empty. It's raining outside. It's nighttime. And I realize this is not the village near my house. I don't know what village this is. I have no clue where I am. I was devastated. And it's a feeling that I have never felt in any other video game ever. And once that moment hit, I was obsessed with this game. And then I spent an obscene amount of hours playing this game. Like, insane amount of hours playing this game. And it's something that Minecraft can achieve because it's so relaxing, yet it's not unforgiving. You know what I mean? Working from home chilling? Nice. Don't get in trouble watching Minecraft and me talk like a moron. Oh, ice cream. What kind of ice cream did you get? Oh, yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead, Jack. Go ahead. Yeah, you don't know how to find stuff. You don't know what things you can do to help yourself to make things easier. You know, I didn't know about enchanting. I didn't know about where to look for iron. So it was really hard at the beginning. But that's part of the fun. Once you kind of learn how to do it all and you do it all, you kind of lose the incentive. That's what happened to me in this world that I'm playing right now. I did everything except for beat the Ender Dragon, the Wither, and the whatever the one guy's called that's in the caves. I did everything, like my armor and everything. It's all diamond. I don't have netherite yet. I haven't looked for the netherite stuff, except for this one. But everything's enchanted to the max. And so it's like all my stuff is enchanted. I had a farm with like 10 stacks of beef. I had my wheat farm. Like I had everything. So I was like, I don't have anything to do because I've done it all. And then that's when I built my blaze farm, which was so far away. So I was like, I'll restart here, so it's closer to the blaze farm. And then once everything's built, then I'm going to go and fight the Ender Dragon. That's kind of the goal that I've set for myself. But the feeling of exploration, the feeling of discovery in this game, when I was saying about unforgiving, there's a game called Green Hell. This is the game that opened me up to the whole survival thing. Because I loved this game so much, I started playing Subnautica, and then because of Subnautica, I got into Green Hell and The Forest. I haven't beaten The Forest yet, but I've beaten all the other ones. Green Hell I've beaten 3 times already. And Green Hell has gone down as one of the most immersive survival games and one of the hardest survival games out there. And the last time I beat it on the highest difficulty. And the thing with Green Hell is that one is like as immersive as they can really make it, with the whole, you not only have to eat, but you have to have like proteins and carbs and fats and fluid. Like it's very specific, but you can also, like, you can get a fever, you can get food poisoning, you can get infected from like wounds. And so it's insanely hard to balance everything and not die. The first few times I played it, I was just trying to keep my character alive. I couldn't even move forward in the story because all I was trying to do was keep him alive. Then by the end of it, I learned how to balance it, and then it turned into my character is alive. I don't even have to think about keeping him alive, and now it's about exploration. But it's all because of Minecraft. And what made Minecraft the one game that I can keep coming back to is the fact that it's easy. Easy in the sense of like, all you have to worry about is eating, and the eating just refills your health. There's no real huge punishment for not eating outside of you can't run once your hearts get down, or once your food gets down to 3, I think it is. Once your food gets down to 3, you can't run, and if your food is not full, then you can't heal. But outside of that, like, there's no real major drawback for the survival elements of it. And, you know, once you're powered up, it's pretty easy to kill the mobs and stuff, except for these jerks. And so it's a much more casual way, which allows you to almost enjoy just exploring the world. Like this teleporter, it led me to a village in this desert. In my original place, there were no deserts around me. And now I'm surrounded by a desert, and I've got this giant mountain. And so it's like, it's this beautiful, yeah, it's super simple. And it's in its simplicity, it can be incredibly complex. Like, people have built full computers on this game, which is nuts. But because it's simple, it's easy to kind of fall into it and learn it. Whereas, like, if somebody who's never played a survival game, the first game was Green Hell, they would hate every survival game ever, because there are so many nuances to that game that it's not a forgiving game. You make one mistake and the whole game is over, and the 10 hours of progress you made are out the window. And so whereas this, like, you make a mistake, yeah, you might lose the armor that you got and stuff, but you can still go back and get it. and your world is still built. Everything is still fine. You just respawn with no XP and no stuff that you were carrying, but everything in your treasure chest is still there. So it's much more forgiving in that aspect, but you can just be completely lost in just building something. You know, I've been building this house for probably about, so yesterday's stream was it was about 2.5 hours. Today I've been streaming for 2 hours, so 4.5 hours, and I had probably spent about 3 hours beforehand on my own. So about 7.5 hours just to build this house and empty out that area. How many games can you spend 7.5 hours literally doing nothing, but still feel so accomplished by the end of it? And that's what Minecraft is really good at. I know that it's, you know, enveloped by a bunch of children-directed content creators. It's basically all for kids, you know? It's very hard to find Minecraft creators that are a bit less childish so you can enjoy it as an adult. That's why I like Mumbo Jumbo so much. He's much more neutral. He doesn't, you know, he doesn't do the whole, welcome everybody, we're playing some Minecraft right now, and we're going to be building this house, and what? There are floating, what? I can't, why are they floating? Why are watermelons floating? Is this something that the Ender Dragon's doing? I can't believe it. All right, let's go find out what to do, kids. I'm 37 years old. I don't want to watch that for an hour. I do because Nora wants to watch that for an hour, but I hate it. Whereas Mumbo Jumbo is more like, all right, everybody, he's got a British accent. He's very elegant sounding. So we're going to build a house, but I want to add a secret entrance. So what we're going to do is use some redstone. So let's go to my creative world. So I can build the redstone, and I'll show you how it works. It's very neutral. He's entertaining enough that kids can like him, but he's not over the top, so adults can watch him without wanting to pull their hair out. But it's because that's what's popular, right? Like, YouTube relies on the kids. The kids' views are what's going to make you a millionaire on YouTube. And so most of the creators are that way. But if you can look past that childish facade that is grown around Minecraft, it's an insanely complex, fun, and satisfying game. I honestly can't believe how much I like Minecraft. I never thought I would like a game as much as I do, let alone a game like Minecraft. Yeah, Tyler, and that's it. It's not for everybody. It's definitely not for everybody. There are a lot of people that have certain needs. We have certain needs, okay? I have needs. Certain needs when it comes to gaming for a game to be considered fun. And this does not check that all off, right? Like, it doesn't have a deep set of lore that will, like, envelop you in, like, a deep story that's gonna make you cry or whatever. It doesn't have any of that. Graphically, not the prettiest game. I do have ray tracing available. I don't have it installed on this computer. I have it installed on my streaming computer, and ray tracing does make this game look insanely beautiful. But it's not the most appealing game to look at. Not having a set objective, a real set objective, can kind of make you feel lost really quickly, which is what's kind of happened to me over the last little bit. Is because I have all the villagers I want, because everything's enchanted the way that I want, because I've already built my base, I don't really have anything in particular to do. And so I felt lost, and I was trying to find a reason to play the game. Thankfully, now that I'm doing it on stream, it's kind of given me a reason to play it. But yeah, definitely not for everybody. It's really, really not. For me, I think it's more, it kind of scratches the mindless itch that I have. There are games that I want to play where I don't have to think while I'm doing things. But there are also times that I want to, like, get creative and do something, like, challenge myself to do something in particular. You know, like building some kind of a redstone contraption. Like right now, I don't need this farm. I can literally travel to my old place and build and just use my farm that's there. It's already built. It already works. I've already got backup stuff there. Why am I doing it now? Because I'm on stream, and it gives me a goal without having to really think much about it. And then I always feel really satisfied because most of the time I build it wrong. And then when it works, I feel so good about it because I'm like, I built this and it works and it's good and it does what I need, and I don't have to go out hunting for food anymore. Those are the things that really, like, hit me in the right spot. Chiza, motion sickness with VR. So with VR, I don't know what the numbers are now. I know the numbers have changed, but when VR first really started to hit the mainstream, like when the Rift, the first Rift was really achievable for people, one of the biggest things was that they realized, I don't remember the exact numbers, but this is roughly where they were. 30% of people will have motion sickness and it will never go away. They'll just be motion sick forever. Their brain just cannot wrap its head around that there's motion happening that they're not feeling. Then there's about a 30% group. No. Is it 30? I think it's 30, somewhere around there, like 33, 30. It's like 1/3 of each. 1/3 of them will feel motion sickness and it'll be fairly intense, but they can grow accustomed to it and then they don't feel the motion sickness anymore and then they're fine and then they can get used to it. They'll never be able to do full-blown, 12-hour sessions, but they'll be able to play for a couple of hours and not really be worse for wear, maybe feel a little bit lightheaded by the end of it, and then after 20 minutes they're fine. And then there's the other third that either don't feel any motion sickness or they feel it, but it's not a huge deal. And after a couple of days, they're completely used to it and then they can go forever. I was an in-between of the two, of the last two. I had a lot of motion sickness when I first started. It was fairly intense, but I was very obsessed with VR. I've always been very obsessed with VR. And so I forced myself to go through it. I remember the first time I did VR, I was sick for like 2 or 3 days. Like I couldn't get past that sickness. I felt like after, I don't know what your age is, but like if you're old enough, after you go on like a really heavy drinking night and the next day you wake up with like the gut rot and you feel nauseated and you feel just kind of dizzy and gross. That's how I felt for days, but I pushed through it. Now, I don't play as much as VR as I used to. So I can probably do about a 3-hour session without any ill effects. I might start to feel a little bit lightheaded, but a big part of that is the heat and the heaviness in the head. But like when I was really playing VR like every day for a couple of hours, I was easily, the one night on Minecraft, I did about 6 to 8 hours, no problem. And the only reason I stopped is because I had to get up in the morning. But I did 6 to 8 hours without feeling anything. But if you can't get past it, you probably never will. Obviously, like if you start feeling sick right away and then you didn't get past feeling sick and like didn't push through it, then you might be able to fight through it, but it's not for everybody. It also depends on like the settings you use. It depends on what you're playing. Like Minecraft can make me a little bit woozy after a couple of hours right now. But if I play Moss is a seeded game. It's a third-person game, which a lot of people who aren't into VR, they're like, why would you play a third-person game in VR? But it's just really cool. It looks like a little diorama in front of you. If you ever liked like remote control cars, it feels like that. So I like it. That one, super easy to play because you're not moving, so you don't feel sick. But then, what's it called? The After the Fall is like Left 4 Dead in VR. You play with 3 other players, it's zombies and all that. It's exactly like Left 4 Dead. That one, after about 2 hours, I start to feel a little bit woozy. That one is a little bit more intense because you are moving a lot faster. There's also the factor of how you play. Like, if you're playing like on a Quest 2 and you're using it wirelessly, you can move your body, and that helps a lot because you're physically moving, so your brain is matching what you're seeing with what you're feeling. But if you're playing with the joysticks, turning with the joystick is really quick to make you sick because your body, the main reason you feel motion sickness with VR is your body is feeling nothing, but seeing that you're moving. And it messes with your brain because your brain is going, why don't I feel this motion? And then your brain assumes that you've been poisoned because you're seeing motion, but you're not feeling it. It's kind of the opposite of car sickness. Motion sickness is that you feel the motion, but you're not seeing it because you're reading or whatever. VR sickness is that you're seeing the motion, but not feeling it. And so your brain reacts, and it reacts a lot harsher to that version versus like regular car sickness or whatever. So moving around with the joystick can be a lot harsher than physically looking around. If I'm wireless, using just my Wi-Fi to play off the PC, and I'm moving around while I'm playing, I can go a hell of a lot longer than by just using joysticks. Yeah, Tyler, and I like this. This game is it's great for me to just be able, like right now, all I'm doing is just filling this stupid hole in that I just opened, and I'm filling it with dirt because I'm going to be building farms. But this is perfect because I'm not having to concentrate on what I'm doing. I'm literally just pressing left, right click, and forward every once in a while when I like move away from here, and then scroll to get the next pile of dirt. So it allows us to just chill and chat without any like major action going on. And if you're doing other stuff, like if you're at work and you're working on like files or you're, you know, reading emails or whatever, you can literally be listening to me and you're not missing anything because I'm literally just doing the exact same motion over and over again. It's great. I really like it. I'm enjoying doing Minecraft on stream, like really enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would. Counterpoint. I personally don't want to watch someone very dry. I don't know what I was talking about when you said that red versus blue. I'm not sure what you're referencing with that. VR hurts your eyes. Yeah, the VR. Okay, so there could be a couple of reasons why it hurts, but there is one reason that it hurts that is out of your control 100%. It's one of the reasons that the eye tracking is very important, and that's one of the reasons that I'm really mad that Sony isn't pushing the PSVR harder than they are, because PSVR has eye tracking, which is phenomenal. So one of the reasons that your eyes can hurt is, one, having a screen in front of your face for a while, especially with VR headsets, because they tend to be kind of heavy. You have to have it on kind of tight, and the pressure alone can just make your eyes hurt just from the pressure you're feeling, causing like a pressure headache. So that can be one of the reasons. Another one of the reasons is your settings might be set wrong. Most VR headsets have a DPI slider, and it's the IPD slider, which is like the interpupillary distance, which is how far apart your eyes are. If it's set wrong, your eyes almost have to be in an uncomfortable position to see. Whether like if you've got the screen set too far apart, then your eyes are almost widening to look, or if they're too close, then your eyes are almost crossing to look. And in that constant position, it can hurt. This also ties into one of the reasons that's completely out of your control, is your eyes, the way that you see in 3D is obviously slightly different angles for each eye, and your brain puts it together to know what you're looking at. And your iris is a muscle, and it contracts and expands all the time. And like any other muscle, if you hold the same position for long enough, your muscles hurt, right? Like we used to do this in theater school where they made us do this thing where we had to hold our arms straight out. For the first 20 seconds, it was no problem. At about the 1 minute mark, most of us had our arms halfway down and most of us were shaking because of the pain. Because your muscles are not meant to be held in the same position for 15, 20 minutes. Well, when you're wearing VR, although it's simulating 3D, your eyes are looking at a screen that is at a set distance from you. And the VR, everything's in focus, whereas your eyes focus on what you're looking at. So the irises are constantly expanding and shrinking to focus. In VR, the screen is all at the same distance, so your eyes stay in the same focus point at all times. Even though you're looking left, right, and center, your irises are focusing roughly at the same thing all the time. So eye tracking is really important, and they're finding that this is going to help with motion sickness, and it should help with graphics, but it should also help with exhaustion. Is that the eye tracker will see what you're looking at and will actually put everything else out of focus slightly, which simulates what your eye is doing. So in that case, your eye will try to actually focus itself as it's happening. And so the game will change its focus based on what your eyes are doing to try to help simulate that so your eye doesn't feel as exhausted. And with the eye tracking, obviously it'll reduce graphics and stuff, which will make everything else seem a little bit nicer. But that is kind of that is a limitation of VR. It is a screen at a set distance in front of your eyes, which is definitely a big drawback to VR. If you can get past that, for me, VR is not just a gimmick. The problem is that it's not easily accessible for everybody. If they can find a way to make it more accessible, if they can find, accessible budget-wise, accessible gameplay-wise, because not everybody has enough space to stand up and play. Like, I've barely got enough space to stand up and play in here. And accessible motion sickness wise, if they can overcome that, VR is seriously the next level in gaming. It's something that is very hard to help other people understand at how much it actually adds to the gameplay element. This house, sure, it looks kind of big on a flat screen, but when I'm standing here in VR and I look up, it's huge. it's gigantic. Or a creeper, when it walks up to me, it's the same size as me. It's huge. Or like I will build like a mob spawner up in the sky, and as I'm like building up and I look down, it's just like 1,000-foot drop. It instantly makes you feel weird because you're way up there. And it's something that unless you're playing in VR, it's really hard to help people understand that it is actually a tangible difference in video games. It's so inaccessible that there's not anybody really taking advantage of how much it adds to the gameplay feature. You know what I mean? Oh, the watermelon. Now, do you mean dry as in like one note, as in always having that high energy, or you mean dry as in like kind of what I'm doing right now, where I'm more low energy and chilled out? But yeah, no, and I think a lot of people do like VR and think it's cool. It's just because it's so inaccessible, it's not worth it for a lot of people, right? I did a video, I took it down because I was definitely being negative. I was definitely being toxic. And a part of it was me being butthurt. I will fully admit that somebody was bashing VR. At the same time, this guy was talking with so much authority about VR, and it was very clear he had zero idea what the hell he was talking about. And if one thing really bugs me, and it's something that bugs me about the whole like Twitch stream guru thing, is people with zero idea of what they're referencing are trying to act like what they're saying is 100% fact. This guy did a video on the PSVR, and his biggest complaints were he didn't want to wear a dumb headset, so why would he buy it? That it wasn't worth it because he had to wear a dumb headset. That he was, how dare they, when he tried to shoot a bow and arrow, that he had to actually mimic shooting a bow and arrow when all he wanted to do was push a button. And that he didn't like the fact that he had to like physically look around to see around the place. He just wants to use a joystick. Dude, you're literally complaining about what VR is. Imagine playing like a 3D game when like the pixel games were a big thing, and then complaining that it's 3D, I have to actually look up and down. I want to just go left and right. Then play a flat screen game. If you don't want to do what VR is, then don't play VR. But if you're gonna review a VR headset, review it with the fact that it's a VR headset. Like you're an idiot. That's what your complaint is, that it's a VR headset? Like, what? That's like if you're gonna listen to a rock album and then you're gonna turn around and go, you know, it was an okay album, but like sometimes I don't want to listen to rock. Cool. Good for you. Yeah, he was upset because he had to stand. Sometimes you want to just sit and play a video game. What? That's the point. That's the point of VR, is to be immersed. Oh, he's like, you know, I don't want to play in a virtual world. I just want to play a video game. You don't want the virtual world of a virtual reality headset? That's what you're mad about? Dude, what? It's so dumb. Oh man, you're alive. Yes. Yes, Jack. I'm glad. Yeah. You know, and VR is not for everybody. It's 100% not for everybody. And I totally understand, right? Because yeah, there are days that I want to play VR because like I like the immersion of the 3D world, but I don't want to have to do this, right? There are definitely days that I don't want to have to do that. So I pull out my PlayStation or I pull out my tablet and I play on that because I don't want to play in VR. But there are days where I want that immersion. Playing Minecraft like this it's great, but it's so much more fun in VR. It's also easier in VR because I can literally just like point to what I want, and the VR tracking goes further. Like here, I can reach I think 5 blocks. So I've got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think, what is it? So there, I can hit this, right? So I've got this block, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm on block 7. So 7. In VR, it actually can reach to about here. So you get a little bit more distance in VR to be able to reach things. So like mining in VR is easier because I can go further and like mine deeper. If you don't really know anything about Minecraft, one of the easy ways to find diamonds is you mine a straight hole, and then every 5 blocks, or every 3 blocks, no. Yeah, every 3 blocks, you mine sideways. And so with regular, I can mine 5 or 6 blocks in. In VR, I can do like 7 or 8 blocks in. And so you get a further reach, which means you cover a bigger area in a shorter amount of time. It's just the way that the blocks are built. It makes sense that you get to see every face of all the blocks around you without having to dig out every single block around you. And so like VR, sure, that makes it way easier. It's more immersive when you're in VR and you can like look out the window and you actually feel like this window is up high, and you look up and like the ceiling feels like it's 20 feet above you instead of just right there, right? So VR has its benefits, but it's not for everybody, and I totally get that. Some people think that like if it's not for them, then VR is bad, and it's like, no, it's just not for you. VR can be really, really cool, but it's just not for everybody. Yeah, VR is great for exercise. 100% great for exercise. It's just, yeah, it's really hot. You get the thing on your face, and like I sweat a lot, so the thing starts to move as I'm playing because I'm sweating. But it's a really nice way to have fun working out. Like I did a ton of Beat Saber until my shoulder started bugging me. I did a ton of Beat Saber. There was another one that was like a punching one that I used to do. The only reason I haven't done it lately is just I haven't had the energy. But I'm probably going to start doing it again soon, because I've kind of plateaued with my weight loss. I'm bouncing between like 182 to 185 pounds all the time. But it's because I'm not doing any like hard cardio. I'm just working, which is fairly rough, but it's not a consistent like 25-minute cardio workout. So I'm probably gonna start doing workouts, but in VR, it's fun because it's a game. It's not like watching a video. Watching a video just feels disconnected, whereas there, like, you have things flying at your face and you have music going and you have voices, and it makes it really cool. VR is cool. It's just not, it's not for everybody. Yeah, it's the same with me, Red vs. Blue. I'm not a big exercise person, but VR gamifies it, and especially the really good exercise ones gamifies it enough to make it fun. You know, it makes it really, really cool. I like it. I like VR a lot. I'm a huge, huge VR fan. I just wish it had more support, and I wish that it was a little bit more, like I said, more accessible for people, because I do know that nausea is a huge, huge hindrance for people, and price. Those are the two big ones. But like, out of all my friends, I'm the one that has the most stamina for VR. My brother can play for a couple of hours before he has to stop. Alana used to be able to do like an hour maximum before she had to stop. But like, I can do 6 or 7 hours. And like an hour, I'm just starting to warm up and get into it. And then they stop and I'm like, oh. So I wish it was a little bit more accessible. And they're getting better at it, right? Like VR is becoming easier to code for, so the games are running smoother, which means it's helping with the nausea. They're adding new technology to help. So I think eventually we will get to the point where VR is something that will be highly, highly profitable as a gaming platform. I don't ever think it'll overtake TV platforms, but I think it will be a very good option for a lot of people. And the more games we get, the better. Because when I got into VR, there were like hour-long video games, right? In an hour, you could beat the whole game and see everything. And now you have Minecraft, an endless game that you can play in VR. Half-Life Alyx, I've been playing that over the last few weeks, and I think I'm only about 6 hours in, and I'm almost near the end. But like a 6-hour game is, you know, a shorter flat-screen game. The Forest, the Green Hell that I've beaten 3 times, and each time took me about 8 hours to beat. I got my money's worth out of that, and it's so cool to be in that jungle and look around, and there's trees, and I can hear laughter and like from the natives that are there, and or I can hear like the spider crawling on the ground, and that immersion is just, it's so cool. It's such a cool feeling, you know. Super hot VR is really fun. Yeah, your brain gets really bored. Yeah, and that makes it really hard, especially in VR, because a lot of them are shorter experiences. So like the boredom doesn't kick in, but once you've beaten it, then it's boring to play it again. So like there has to be bigger experiences. There's not enough yet. But it's because VR is so inaccessible and it's so expensive. Like the Quest 2 is the most budget-friendly system, but like in Canada, you're still looking at like $500 for the Quest 2, for the basic one. And that limits you to what's on the Quest platform. So if you want a PC to run it, you're going to look at like another $500 or $600 for like the bare essentials for a PC to run VR. So now you're up to $1,000 for VR. And then there's not a lot of games, so $1,000, or I could spend like $500 on a PS5 and have way more accessibility for it. So it's like it's not super accessible for people. So then the developers aren't spending as much time on it as they would on like a big AAA platform. So like that's a big drawback. Like I've gotten to the point where I've played everything that I want to play in VR, except for Lone Echo. I haven't beaten either of the two, and Asgard's Wrath was another one, and there's one called Chronos. Those are the 3 games that I want to play, or 4 because the one's 2 games that I haven't played and beaten. Everything else that's out there I'm not super interested in, but I've beaten all the ones that I like. And so I'm like, I'm limited on what to play now. So now I'm going back and replaying games in VR just because I've got nothing else to play because the platform is still so new. But I'm hoping it's gonna evolve, right? Yeah, they just announced the Quest 3. Apple is about to announce their VR headset. They haven't said they're announcing a VR headset, but there's been a lot of hints towards it. Like the logo they sent for the invitation had a bunch of like rounded, what looks like lenses stacked on top of each other on each side, which is how the lenses work in a VR headset, especially the type of VR headset that they're being rumored to be making. But they also announced Upload VR. They invited Upload VR, which is a huge VR platform on YouTube that does VR news and stuff, and they've never been invited to an Apple event, and they're a VR-centric page. So for them to be invited to the Apple event, they're going to talk about the VR headset they're making. So they're about to announce theirs. Obviously, the PSVR 2 just came out. That one's flopping, but that has mostly to do with the price than anything else. Nobody wants to pay essentially more money for the accessory than for the console. If they reduce the price, like drastically reduce the price, I think it would have done much better. But with all the technology in there, I don't see them reducing the price anytime soon. But there's quite a few leaps that have been made in VR, like really tangible leaps that have been made in VR. So I think there is a possibility of VR dying, but I think we're at like that precipice of another upspike, because when the Quest came out, there was a huge influx of VR when the Quest 2 came out, especially because it was so budget friendly. You didn't need a PC, you could just kind of put it on and go. But now we've kind of reached that plateau again where nobody's really doing anything with VR. So with the Quest 3 coming out, we'll see. I think we're just at that point where like things are still going to stay a little bit stagnant, and then all of a sudden something new is going to come out and it's going to skyrocket. So with the PSVR 2, from everything I heard, Infinity Gamer, hello, nice to see you. Besides an amazing community, I've been preparing for a farm. I finally prepped everything to build a farm out here. I'm out of time, so I got to stop. But I built a big space out here to build a farm. That's what I've been doing for the last couple of days. This was all a big mountain. I cleared all the trees, cleared all the mountain itself, and then filled it with dirt so I can build a couple of farms around the corners here. And that's what we're going to be doing next time I stream. Because I gotta stop. I gotta go pick up Nora in just a couple of minutes. But yeah, with the PSVR, it's kind of a double-edged sword. Parts of it don't add up, parts of it do. There were some issues with the head tracking and hand tracking that were going on, but it wasn't everybody, and it seems to be more of like a glitch that was happening with the units that were sent out, the review units that were sent out. But nobody really knows because PlayStation never addressed it. And they don't know if it was a software issue or not, because it seemed like it worked on some games and it didn't work on others. And so it was weird. Nobody really knows whatever happened with that. Pricing is way out in left field. Like in Canada, it's $7.99 and the Quest is $4.99. And with the Quest, you buy it and you're good to go. The PSVR, you still have to buy the console, right? So like it's $7.99 just to even like have the hardware to do it, plus you need the console. So that part, they're completely not even on the same playing field as anybody else. But where they do outdo everybody is it's got the OLED screen, which has the best blacks and the best HDR features out of all the headsets that are out there. It's got the highest resolution of all the headsets, except for, I think, the Vive, the Steam one. Not the Vive, the Steam, I can't remember what it's called. Valve Index, the Valve Index. I think that one might have a slightly higher resolution. I'm not sure, but I know the PSVR 2 is one of the highest, if not the highest resolution screen with the OLED, so it has the best HDR out there. It's got the vibration built into the headset, so it's got that extra immersion. It's got the PlayStation 5 style controller with like the adaptive triggers, so they resist you and stuff, which is apparently, out of all the things the PlayStation included, that's the game changer for VR that nothing can compare to. It's got that. Obviously, because it's got the eye tracking, it's able to use the power of the PlayStation 5 in a much more effective way than regular PC VR can, because PC VR renders everything, whereas the PSVR 2 looks at what you're looking at and spends more rendering power on what you're looking at and renders everything else less, which allows the things you're looking at to actually be at a higher quality than what it would be on a PC that would be comparable. Like if you're using a 4090, yeah, it's going to look better on the PC. But if you're like me using a 3070, it'll look better on the PSVR and run better on the PSVR. But the biggest thing is everything that's available on the PSVR is available on everything else, and it's been available for a while on everything else. So it's just, there's nothing making it worthwhile. That's where the PSVR is completely falling flat. Outside of that, it's comparable to having a top-end VR system on PC, except for the price. But yeah, it just, when you do price to performance ratio, it doesn't add up to the other headsets. But if you just look at raw performance, the PSVR is actually the best VR platform, bar none. It's just everything else. You can't just look at the one metric. You have to look at everything. And that's where it makes the PSVR just not worth it. And for most people, it's like, this is the best platform. I would not buy it. And so it's like that's what PlayStation screwed up completely, because it should be the best platform and you have to buy it. Instead, it's the best platform, but if you've got any other VR headset, don't buy this one. And that sucks. That really sucks. You know what I mean? Moa, hello, nice to see you. Welcome. Yeah, Infinity Gamer, I gotta go pick up my daughter. I actually am supposed to leave right now. I was supposed to leave like 2 minutes ago. I gotta get out of here. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna stream this weekend. Because I gotta work this weekend. I don't think I have anything else set up. Maybe I'll stream for a little bit. I don't know. Nora's really wanting to stream with me. Obviously, TikTok is not a fan of underage kids being on stream and stuff. So if she streams with me, we've kind of agreed that she'll be sitting and playing the game in my world, but we're not going to be having her on camera or anything. So maybe I'll stream over the weekend. I'm not sure. We'll see what happens. And yeah, that's pretty much it. There's not much more to say. If I'm not back this weekend, I will 100% be back on Tuesday. I'm feeling pretty good, especially with this. I'm able to just kind of talk and vent and have a good time and then do something mindless. So I'm not feeling the pressure of streaming. I think I wouldn't be up to streaming as often if I was still doing Dead Island and Elden Ring right now. I will definitely get back to those games, but right now, because of everything that's happened, I'm really enjoying just kind of mindlessly playing Minecraft and setting up stupid goals for myself. So like next week, I'm going to work on actually building a couple of farms. For one of the streams, and then the next stream maybe we'll go exploring, go find a cave or something to look at and see if we can find some ender pearls maybe. I don't know, I haven't decided yet. Anyways, yeah, if I don't see you this weekend, I will be back Tuesday. Thank you everybody for hanging out. I really appreciate it. TikTok, thank you for hanging out. I will see you in a few days. I will try to record some videos this weekend, try to get some stuff up. I've got a couple of recorded stuff that I never edited, so maybe I'll do that with my longer hair. I cut my hair, by the way, by myself. My hair was just too long and it was driving me crazy. So I'll probably edit some of those videos and post them. And if I'm not back over the weekend, I'll be back on Tuesday. Tyler, I'll see you later, man. Hopefully we can hang out soon once all this stress and drama passes, all this BS that I've gone through. Maybe we can hang out again sometime soon. I had a really good time last time. It was fun. It was really fun. I feel like we went on a date and I'm telling you, I had a really good time. I don't have friends, all right, people? All right, I'm excited that I made a friend. Anyways, yeah, I'll see everybody later. Thank you so much for hanging out. TikTok, I will see you later. See ya. And live and end. Bye. And Twitch and YouTube, thank you all for being here. I really appreciate you all hanging out. You're very welcome. Thank you for hanging out at the stream. I had a really fun time. I will hopefully see you in a few days. If not, I'll see you Tuesday for sure. I will definitely be back Tuesday 100%. All right, see you later.